Thank you very much. It is 7:03. We just exited executive session and now begin the open session portion of tonight's meeting. It's February 4th, 2021. Welcome to the Town of Sherborn Select Board. Without any further ado, I will ask the town administrator to please read the agenda, and you don't have to read the opening executive session, but from the opening 7 o'clock on.
Okay. The first item is a consent agenda, excuse me, with payroll warrant, and then minutes from January 7th, 2021, and then a meeting calendar, excuse me, of select board dates, February 11th for an executive session, and February 18th, March 4th, and March 18th for regular meetings, and then the police chief search committee for February 11th, February 25th, March 11th, and March 25th. The second item is proclamation and recognition of Charles and Libby Yon for their years of outstanding service to the town. Item 3, at 7:30 p.m., is a public hearing regarding ambulance fees, and is a consideration of increase in ambulance fees for Sherborn Fire and Rescue Department with Zach Ward, Fire Chief. Item 4 is library construction update with Richard Mark, CHA, Owner's Project Manager for the library. Item 5 is COVID-19 update with COVID team and funding status. Item 6 is consideration of FY 2022 omnibus budget and 2021 annual town meeting warrant articles. Excuse me. Those entities coming up for budget discussions: a historical commission with budget and capital item, elder housing budget with Kitty Sturgis chair, a council on aging budget and warrant article with Sue Kelleher, COA director, and a planning board warrant article with Gino Carlucci, town planner, and Marion Neutra chair. Item 7 is town caucus, town meeting, and town election discussion with the town clerk, possible vote. Jackie Morris, town clerk, and George Fisk from caucus will be present. Item 8, consideration of appointment to the Sherborn Police Department, interim chief David Bento. The officer is John McGuire as a full-time police officer. Item 9 is consideration of police department certification under the governor's newly enacted Police Reform Act with Chief David Bento. Item 10 is consideration of routine business with select board reports and continuation of goals review. And item 2 under number 10 is staff report.
Well, thank you very much. Do I have any motions or comments from the select board on regarding the agenda?
Oh, are you going to make that?
Yeah, I would move that we approve this consent agenda as noted.
Can I just make a comment? If somebody's not muted, could you please mute yourself? There's some background noise that I'm hearing.
Yeah, I am too, actually. Maybe if the and we have quite a few members on it, so I have a count of 50. So I guess if I could ask whoever the moderators are or whatever on this, just kind of force mute everyone.
Okay.
Force
Try
mute
to
everyone.
figure this out because I guess I'm still a co-host, but
Yeah, working on it.
okay, I got it, I think.
And we'll unmute as people want to be recognized.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda. Or did somebody already do that?
Jeff already moved. So
I'll do a second. Sorry.
all in favor, Jeff,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
I am as well. Diane, do we have anyone signed up for public comment? I think she's on my second page. I don't see anything.
Okay.
Okay, nothing. Okay. So without any further ado, move on to the consent agenda.
That's what we just approved.
Oh,
Or
sorry.
oh, I thought we approved the.
I thought we just did the
Oh,
the,
sorry.
the agenda, the regular agenda. I think we're on to agenda item number 1, consent agenda. It sounds like you want to move to approve it though.
Sure. So moved.
Second.
Move in the second. Jeff, how do you vote?
We haven't gotten any better, Chuck. Aye.
In fact, worse, I think.
As soon as I get used to this, we'll go back live. Paul, how do you vote?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I am I as well. Jeff, if our someone, whoever's a moderator, could you unlock at least Diane Moore's? Make sure Diane Moore's and David are both unmuted.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen, George, and why don't
Okay, yeah, and I'll do yep.
if I can figure it out here. Let's see.
Diane
what
just
we're
sent me a
doing.
text saying that she couldn't unmute herself because we're kind of force muting, which makes sense when we have 50 people. I do think you have to do something like that, but I want to make sure everyone has a chance.
All right.
There's something.
So
we
the next item is the proclamation. So I'd like to read 2 proclamations, please.
Hang on. Yep.
When you're ready, Jeff.
Can you see it?
Yep, I've got it on my screen too. So, where a proclamation, whereas Sir Charles E. Chuck Yan, a longtime resident of the town of Sherborn, has served by the Sherborn community with unending energy, enthusiasm, and an amazing sense of humor for over 30 years. Whereas he has served on various boards and committees, making significant contributions that will long be remembered. He has been a member of the Recycling Study Committee in 1986, Recycling Committee in 1989 and 1992, Advisory Committee from 1998 to 2004, Planning Board member from 2012 to 2014, Town Governance Committee from 2013 to 2014, and Select Board from 2015 to 2021. Whereas during his tenure on the Select Board, Chuck has continuously displayed a high degree of respect for his fellow members, a cooperative attitude in all his deliberations, and strived to fully implement the policies and decisions of the board. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the town of Sherborn, on behalf of all of its citizens, extend our heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to Charles E. Yan for making the town of Sherborn a great place to work and live. Witness whereof we have caused the seal of this town to be affixed to this proclamation on this February 4th, 2021 in the year 2021. Signed by the 4 remaining members of the board.
Thank you very much. All right. We have another proclamation there as well, correct?
Yes, and I'll read the other proclamation next. A proclamation, whereas Elizabeth Libby Yan, a longtime resident of the town of Sherborn, has served the Sherborn community as a steady, dependable volunteer who is always ready to lend moral support or a helping hand when needed. Whereas she has served on various boards and committees, making significant contributions that will long be remembered. She has been a member of the Cable TV Advisory Committee from 1989 to 1990 and 1990 to 1996, School Committee in 1988, 1991 to 1994, Focus 2 from 1990 to 1991, Elderly Housing Revenue from 1994 to 1995, Regional School Committee from 1996 to 97, 1996 to 1999, Town Administrator Search Committee in 2007, Library Building Committee from 2015 to 2020, and Council on Aging from 2017 to 2020. Whereas during her time serving the town of Sherborn, Libby has always demonstrated thoughtfulness, integrity, a sense of fairness, and has provided invaluable leadership and guidance on many significant projects. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the town of Sherborn, on behalf of all its citizens, extend our heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to Libby Yan for making the town of Sherborn a great place to work and live. In witness whereof, we have caused the seal of this town to be affixed to this proclamation on this February 4th, 2021, in the year 2021.
Thank you very
Jeff,
much.
do you want to bring up the other?
And I believe there's a what do you call it?
That's the wrong
chair.
one. Hang on.
One
Let's see
second.
if I can find it.
It's a Boston chair with a town seal, and I believe Sean Clean has that right now.
Yes, Sean will be he'll find you, Chuck.
A nice tushy spot for you.
Definitely, I want to thank you both. And although you're gone, but you're still involved. I think.
Jeff, can you unmute Chuck and Libby?
Yeah.
Yeah, working on it.
Chuck was
Before
just voted in as a member
Now
of.
now you have to do it, Chuck. There you go.
So Chuck was recently voted last week as a voting member of the Police Chief's Selection Committee because we simply value his input, and I think is this maintaining that skill set and that knowledge in the town is huge, and we're very thankful for Chuck for doing it moving forward, and thanks for Chuck and Libby for all the work you've done over the last several decades.
Well, thank you so much. Lovely proclamations, and I've always wanted to be the Honorable Order of something. So the Honorable Order of Sherborn and Sir Charles, I appreciate that. Diane is so thorough. She missed one of Libby's biggest contributions, which was she co-chaired the Regional School Committee, the building project that built a new uh, uh, demolished the old middle school, built a new one, and renovated the high school. And that's a project that finished on time and just very slightly over budget, despite the contractor going bankrupt. So I would just add that to Libby's long list. But
Thanks to Ford Spalding.
I would say Libby and Ford Spalding, yeah, and a good building project manager. But thank you. Yeah, we regretted moving out of town because of some health issues that I was having. We needed to live on a single story house, but it's just been such an honor and a pleasure to serve the town. I was trying to make a list of all the people that I'd worked with and to make the point that everyone on this board has made and Paul makes all the time, which is the town really runs on the backs and labors of volunteers. The first committee I served on was the recycling committee, and Jack Mulhall and Carol Rubenstein were just incredible. But I had to make a list of all the people, and I'm sure I'm going to forget somebody, but Kitty Sturgis, Jim Campbell, Bob Delaney, Grace Shepard, Corey and Gil Lincoln, Georgia Durr, there's a blast from the past, Mike Kickham, Marianne Clancy, George Morrill from the advisory committee, Stephen Leahy, Mary Wolf, Ben Williams, Vicki Rellis, all from the advisory committee. John and Eric, John Higley and Eric and I were on the planning board, and Marianne Neutra has done much better than I ever did on it, as has Addie Mae Weiss. But the town is blessed to have people like these folks and Daryl Beardsley at the Board of Health, who just put in so much time. But the other thing is the town is blessed to have, the town pays market rates and for wages, and that's okay, not great, but we just get terrific people who just do outstanding service way above and beyond what they get paid. So if you'll indulge me, I'll have a quick list of the people that I wanted to thank for making my life easier. Jackie Morrison, Carol Marple, and Tony in the clerk's office. Gino Carlucci is just sort of everywhere. Nancy Hess and Pam Dowse, Zach Ward in the fire department, David Bento, Sean Colleen, who had been on the select board and is just doing a terrific job at CM&D, Heidi Doyle, Sharon McPherson, Elizabeth Johnson, and Sue Kelleher. But most of all, I wanted to thank the three folks in the select board office who are just invaluable. Dave Williams and Jeannie Guthrie and Diane, who laugh at my bad jokes and put up with my dog coming in and marauding their trash can looking for any food. So thank you all for making our life easier. And Libby, did you want to say something?
I would love to say something. Given the length of your agenda, though, I'll cut my remarks short. But I wanted to thank you. This is an unexpected honor, and I feel, at least on my side, there's so many other people who deserve this a proclamation, but thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I just want to say that when Chuck and I moved to Sherborn, we were looking for a school system. We found that and so much more. It's been just an amazing community of friends, acquaintances, neighbors, town employees, town volunteers, and it's just made such a huge difference in our life. And the opportunity to be able to participate in things, in issues that we care about with people who care and really want to make the world a better place for everyone has just been an experience of a lifetime. And I'm so grateful to everyone who I've ever worked with or laughed with or cried with or walked with. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you all very, very much.
Well, once COVID has passed, we will be seeing everybody at St. Teresa's. That's still will be our parish. So, but thank you both thank you all for the wonderful honor. This select board has been just such a pleasure to work with. The 5 members don't agree on everything, but always agree civilly. And we have just wonderful discussions with people with just incredible skills. I don't think the town realizes the hourly billing rate for the 5 folks on this board and other boards would just be huge. So the expertise and the experience and passion are just wonderful. So thank you.
Don't change.
Yeah.
Eric, could I say a word too?
Feel free.
I just want to say how much I appreciate both Chuck and Libby. Over the years, I've become quite fond of both of you. And it's a wonderful mix that you have of common sense, of enthusiasm, of being smart, and caring. What a combination. It should be an inspiration to everybody in our community to follow in your footsteps. It has been such an honor and such a privilege. But I want to thank both of you for all you've done for the community, all you've done for the Board of Selectmen, all you've done for all the boards and committees that you've served on. Thank you and thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any other comments from the select board?
Oh, there's one other thing.
Yep.
We need to actually do a motion to approve the 2 proclamations.
Okay.
So they become part of the permanent records of the town. So I move that we issue the 2 proclamations.
Okay.
Oh,
Second by George. All right. So all in favor, Jeff,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
George.
Aye.
Yeah.
I would just add that we could have saved a lot of time, Chuck and Libby, if we named the people that you haven't worked with, because there are none.
We're still in the voting. I still might vote, but I'm gonna reveal something here that many people who don't stay late at night or whatever else don't know, that sometimes when we move to close a meeting at like 11:30 at night, Chuck, to be funny, goes nay whenever we move around to close it. So I'm tempted to do that, but I will not in this case. I as well, of course. It is. We have a few minutes. I don't know if anyone from the audience wants to make a brief comment. I always like it because we're doing we have a lot of people on. If you could use the raise hand feature in Zoom, if you know how to do that. If someone wants to make a brief comment or two.
It's in the reactions section if you want to do it.
Yeah, you open up the participant screen, use the raise hand feature there. I can't see anyone.
I don't see anyone right now.
There's iPad 3 has a hand raised.
So if iPad 3,
I don't know who that is.
iPad 3. I have a feeling it's Sue.
Sue, you have to unmute yourself too.
I don't know. I'm looking for her. I don't.
No, there she is. She's fine. She's unmuted. Go ahead, Sue.
There
I-
we go. I just want to tell Chuck and Libby, thank you very much for all your laughs over the years. And more importantly, I deliver out of town.
Sean Colleen also has his hand up.
Yeah, Sean.
I just wanted to say what a pleasure it was to get to know Libby.
Not Chuck.
All right. So it's amateur hour at this Sherborn stand-up. Okay. So if it's okay with anyone else, it's 7:22. We cannot adjust the timing of agenda item number 3. Are the people here for the COVID update? I would like me to move up agenda item number 5. I think it's something we could fit in there in about 10 minutes. As COVID update from Zach and Daryl again.
Daryl's on here.
It's on.
And
I
so is
asked you to
Zach.
unmute. You can unmute yourself now, Daryl.
All right, Zach, why don't you go first?
I'm trying to find Zach.
Luckily, I do not have an update from the emergency management standpoint, Daryl. I think it's all on you tonight.
Oh, gee, okay. Let's see. Are there any burning questions that people have? I do have a few updates, but is there anything?
Just my only question, Daryl, is on the vaccinations. Do you have guidance for like the seniors in town as to where to go, or I guess what's the vaccination plan in Sherborn, and where do you recommend people to go?
We recommend any number of places, the standard places. We are not recommending one place over another.
Because some towns I know, I mean, our town's small, so we don't have our own vaccination clinic, obviously, but I didn't know if there was a convenient place for seniors to go so they don't have to go to a large place like Foxborough, like Gillette Stadium.
Well, the good news is there are a number of seniors who have gone to Foxborough, and the reports that we've gotten back from them is that it was very well run.
Oh, good. I didn't know
So
if the
that-
access was hard because it's such a big place. That's all they would have to walk too far or anything like that.
I don't know if any of the people who have talked to the Board of Health about their experience are on now, but they could share more details.
Sue Kelleher has
But
her hand
the
up.
replies have been good. There are a few things. So since we last spoke, the White House has had 2 briefings for public health officials from across the country at all levels. I'm sure you've heard Nirav Shah, who's up in Maine, is on these, and heads of various cities and what have you. So it's very open. It's a very frank discussion. It is the first communication we have had from the federal government in this entire pandemic. So it's nice to be getting that information now. Since they came on board, the number of vaccines went up from about 8.5 or 6 million a week. Then they went in the first week, it went up then to 10 million a week being distributed around the country. And for the next 3 weeks on the horizon, they expect to be at 10.5 million and to be continuing to up that. So they recognize well what the challenges are and what the frustrations are, and they're working on them and they're chipping away at them. And one of the things that they have also launched is a nationwide pharmacy program, and that will have a separate allocation of vaccines. So it's not going to diminish what the states are getting now. They're going to set up another stream essentially for them. And they're starting now, though, because what they want to do is get the systems worked out so that as more vaccine becomes available and pharmacies get used to it, that they will be able to participate more in this going forward. So it is really a training ground for that, in effect. No, let's see.
Daryl, Sue
Yes.
Kelleher had her hand up. I didn't know if she
Yep,
had
go
a
ahead.
question related.
Yeah, unmute Sue.
Yeah, so we're trying to also update people as sites open up that are closer to, rather than go to Gillette. But I also have heard that the Gillette experience has been okay. And the CVS in Medfield, I know they're going to be doing vaccinations. There's a new site opening up on February 27th in Needham, the 135 Wells Avenue, the old Boston Sports Club. They're going to be open up 7 days a week. So a lot of physician groups are reaching out to patients 75 and over. The state expects to have a phone bank to help people also register for appointments. We can do it on a limited basis, but we're trying to keep people as updated as things change rapidly, and just asking people to be a little patient while things get worked out and the kinks get worked out, but everybody will get vaccinated.
So we've also worked with Sue and the Council on Aging to develop a postcard to send to the seniors. We've debated whether we would send it townwide because things are changing so fast, but for the seniors, given that they're very close to, some of them are already qualified to go get vaccinations. So,
Daryl, 1 second. Eric, Frank Jenkins has his hand up. I think he wants to be recognized. I'll try to unmute him here. I think you have to unmute too, Frank.
There you go.
All right, this is Beth Jenkins. I was at Gillette 2 days ago, and 5 minutes ago, there were 2,800 slots open at Gillette. The process is simple, streamlined. And so anyone who and you can get an appointment sometime this weekend or early next week.
Great.
Mask up too.
also, just so people know, they are not allocating as many doses for smaller venues, such as towns can only get up to 100 a week. So if you think about vaccinating, say, 3,000 people in Sherborn and they need 2 doses at 100 a week, that's going to be 60 weeks, I believe it will come out to be. So these big sites are getting better and better at what they're doing, and the allocations are for that. And there's a limited amount of doses to go around. So if we start breaking it up into these little pieces, it's going to get much less efficient and take longer to vaccinate the whole population. So,
Most of the vaccines around here, pretty much the Moderna vaccine, so it's easy to refrigerate. Do you know, is anyone know offhand?
Gillette is Moderna, and also I was going to add, or Zach can fill us in. Our first responders are all going in next Monday or next Wednesday for their second dose of Moderna. It helps when the factory's in Norwood.
Exactly. That's one of regionally. I know one of the things I heard is that Johnson & Johnson might go to more remote areas because it'll be a one-shotter. So it'll be easier to do people in like Appalachia or the Rocky Mountains or what have you.
It doesn't need refrigeration either.
Yeah. So
right. More to come.
Any other questions for Daryl or I guess Zach? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, thank you both very much. Very insightful. And then okay, that's all I had. I had one question, but I'll hold off. It is now 7:30, so it is now time for the public hearing on ambulance fees. So agenda item number 3, consideration of increase in ambulance fees for Sherborn Fire and Rescue Department. Zach Ward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple things. I think everybody's aware that over the last year, the town's been looking at certain fees that it assesses for certain services in an effort to increase revenues. The second point I'd make is that ambulance fees from time to time are adjusted in order to cover rising costs of providing that service. And Sherborn, according to our records at the fire department, has not raised these fees since February of 2016. So we're 5 years out, which is a considerable amount of time for not raising these fees. So our proposed rate increases were posted on the fire department page on the website. On that posting was my contact information. I did not receive any questions or objections from residents. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I had one question, and that is, have we done an analysis? How do we compare to the surrounding community?
Yeah, so I actually took data from 50 communities in the state. We participated in a study along with Hopedale Fire a few months ago. So we looked at the different fire districts in the state and so on. I don't know if I have, Mr. Chair, the communities that directly surround us. I will tell you how our rates compare statewide. We are a little higher than the average, right? The old rates were still a little higher than the average. I don't think we're at the top of the list. But I think the main point is that, we're not looking to place a burden on the residents that are using the ambulance service. We're really trying to build the insurance companies, whether they're car insurance companies, private health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, just to kind of increase our revenue.
Okay, thank you very much. The only other question I had is, and it probably is a stupid question, but I'm just going to figure out, on the table you have current proposed. What do these acronyms mean? BLS, ALS1, ALS2?
It's a great question. So as you may well know, in Sherborn, we have a basic life support ambulance. Okay, so when we do a basic life support or BLS call, that's the rate we bill at. Okay, now even though we don't have ALS in town, we call for intercepts, usually from Framingham. And what happens in those cases is if it is an actual ALS call, we bill at the ALS rate. We in turn pay Brewster Ambulance, which is Framingham's 911 provider, a flat rate of $325 per intercept that they do. So even though we're not an ALS department, we still bill that ALS rate and take in that ALS revenue. And then if you bump up to ALS2, so that what that does is it accounts for different procedures that the paramedics might provide. So some of our ALS2 calls would typically be a trauma incident, a cardiac arrest. some of the big ones where they're gonna push medications, they're gonna do different interventions to try to save the person's life or keep them alive, and that's why you can see that rate is significantly higher, because usually the cost for providing for that call is much higher.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Could I?
Question, yeah, any questions from the select board? And then I'll take
Yeah.
questions from the public. Yeah, go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
All right, so I've been through these hearings many times over the years. And each time I basically ask the same question. That question has to do with what happens to the amounts that aren't paid by the insurance company. So if you look at the amount that we're charging for an ambulance run, we don't want anybody to decide not to call an ambulance because they're scared that they might end up having to pay a huge bill. And so I've asked every fire chief who's done this in the past, and I'm asking it now tonight, that if there's some amount not paid by an insurer, we do not pursue our citizens to get that last dollar from them. We take what we get from the insurance company and we leave it at that.
That's a great question, Selectman Dorenza. So yeah, so we, again, you know, our primary goal, I think, as you alluded to, is to collect this money from insurance. I can tell you that we are one of the very few communities in the area that I'm aware of that actually does not have a contract with a collection agency, which would go out and hound our residents to collect these fees, right? So we don't do that. You know, we truly, our goal is to collect from the insurance company. If people have problems paying whatever's left over, like you alluded to, you know, typically they contact the ambulance billing company that we use, and they in turn contact me. I can tell you that in 14 months, that's only happened one time. So again, we're not looking to put a burden on the residents. If you know, I always tell people, if you're thinking about calling for an ambulance, you should probably just call, and everything else will get squared away later.
And that's the point I want to emphasize. We don't want anybody to risk their life because they're afraid of the cost. They need to call the ambulance. We have a great ambulance service. We have great firefighters, EMTs, and all the rest. They're there to help the citizens. And we're setting these rates in order to address what we can get from the insurance company, but not to be a deterrent for people to take care of themselves. So the first thing for every citizen to hear is, when you need an ambulance, call for an ambulance. Trying to get in the back seat of a car and have somebody drive you, that's not the way to go.
All right, George.
Ambulance, get our ambulance service. Don't worry about the bill.
All right, I'd like to recognize.
And I think we.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Paul. I thought you were done.
I just want to ask Zach, the numbers that you came up with here for the increased fees. I know a couple of years ago, the ambulance revolving fund was depleting because I don't think we were collecting enough based on the costs to operate the ambulance. Will these increased fees offset that? So it's running at so we're actually adding to the revolving fund or not running at a deficit?
That's what we're trying to do, Selectman Morrow. And you know, it's funny with ambulance revolving funds, right? I don't know of a single community in Mass, unless maybe there's a community out west that's like a strictly volunteer ambulance service. I don't know of a community in Mass that makes a profit on the ambulance. So I think what I'm hoping that these fees will help us kind of bridge that gap, so there's less taxation needed to cover the cost of the ambulance.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't want to operate at a profit. I'm just saying less.
Absolutely.
Of a deficit.
Yeah, and people, it's funny though, people ask that question all the time, and I think for the service that we provide, you know, 2 EMTs in-house 24/7, I'm pretty confident to say that as far as the taxation side of the house, we have one of the lowest cost 24/7 ambulances in the state.
Great.
So because we're using part-time help. So
I actually have a follow-up question on comparison to surrounding communities. How do we compare on the cost per mile? Looks like this is $38 per mile, I think it is, based on some kind of mileage there is. And the reason I ask that is just because I know some people, I'll admit that I'm in a certain situation. You're stuck in networks, and you have a certain network, and whatever hospital you have, the network is not immediately, it's not nearby. It might be, let's say, in Newton, whatever else. So how do we compare to other communities on the mileage?
So we went from 34 to 38, which is an 11% increase. I would say we're slightly above average. I think Jim called, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta.
We're
I don't
slightly
need-
above, yeah. We're slightly above average for our district 14, which is Middlesex, primarily Middlesex County. We're lower than other fire districts in the state. I just think because of the 5-year span without increases, I felt like that was fair. And I just want to point out that my hope is my hope is now annually to come back and say May and just do a flat percentage across the board, 1 or 2% every year, just to kind of keep up with the rising costs. That's what we hope to do. And then the other thing I would just ask before I forget, because I will, if you choose to approve these fees, I would just ask that you make the motion that they go into effect immediately.
Okay.
Before I forget.
Any other questions from the board? If
Well, I
not,
don't know, at another time, we can maybe have Zach talk about long-term plans for ambulance services too, because he's got some strategic plans that, could change the structure too.
oh, that's interesting. I would like that. But right now, this is a public hearing, so I'd like to say if there's any questions from the general public attending this meeting, I'd like to use the raise hand feature. If you can't do that, you can wave at the camera, even though I can't guarantee I'll see you like a raise hand feature.
See anything here?
Oh, come on, Sue,
Sue Tyler's waving at the camera.
I know. She knows how to use the wave hand. Go ahead, Sue. If someone can unmute her.
There you go.
There you go. She's good.
I'm unmuted. Yeah, just out of curiosity, as far as we've all been living through this awful year of COVID and a pandemic, as far as the ambulance calls, I know that you're well covered as far as masks and all this. So I'm assuming that's added on to the expenses for an ambulance run, and those expenses will continue. Once COVID is under control, it will probably never be fully under control. There's always something else down. So is that being taken into consideration for your increases?
That's a really great question, Sue. So luckily for a lot of the PPE, I know you're well aware of PPE and infection control. Luckily most of those costs are being picked up by the federal government through CARES or FEMA reimbursements or things like that. The other day, you'll see me back at your next meeting. We actually just got a grant for PPE the other day too. So.
Yeah, well, you say most of the expenses, but not all of the expenses.
I think
the town of Sherborn needs to be well aware and support the fire department, making sure beyond what we get from the federal government that we provide for the EMTs and the firefighters.
Absolutely.
Beyond what we get from the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the general public? Okay, seeing none, is there any motions here or any other comments from the select board? Paul.
I move to approve the proposed fee settings as set forth in the chart prepared by the fire chief to be effective immediately.
All right.
Second.
By George. Okay, so all in favor, Jeff?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I might as well. Thank you very much, Zach.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
I do look forward to hearing back from you, perhaps not during the finance season where things are always blocked up with budgets, but any ideas you have on how to restructure our ambulance system.
Yeah, we're going to be looking, doing an internal, review on how to maybe increase revenue and things like that. So I look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the agenda item number 4, library construction update. Richard Marks from CHA, that's the owner's project manager for the library construction. Is Richard on this call?
Yes, yes, I see him.
I don't see him.
He's,
Yeah, he's on
Here.
here.
yeah, he's good.
I guess.
Okay, there he is. Oh, that's right. Nice background.
Thank you. And I think Mike McNulty has a few slides, but we can start the update. Progress has been, yeah, Mike has his hand up. Progress has been slow and steady. As anybody can see, they've made progress on the cedar siding on the outside of the building. Jim Kolb is here with us as well. And that's been a fairly significant, thanks Mike, has been a fairly significant change over the last few weeks. They have received the curtain wall and storefront framing, which is essentially the windows that you see plywooded in. Unfortunately, despite the fact this is what we call a critical path activity, or one that's on directly impacts the schedule, the crew has had a COVID delay and as much as 10 days due to quarantining and so forth. So that was a big setback. That came in, Mike, I think a week Monday, right? A week ago Monday, that arrived. So that has set back the progress, especially on the visible sides that you can see that are covered with plywood. We have a few more slides that we can show that will give a sense of progress. Interior wise, Mike, do you want to just describe what we're seeing
Yeah,
here?
I mean, so what we see so far are the interior finishes that they were able to, provide the right conditions for in the building with their temporary protection. So that meant no carpet, that meant no, finish MEP items, because that meant no finish paint. But what we do have is some tile, some VCT, and I'll keep going to the next slide. There's some more interior photos. Some of the shelving going back in, and some of the wood ceiling going in at the lower level there.
Yeah, the millwork contractor's been steadily on site. They do all the woodwork that you're seeing here. So that's been a plus over the last couple of weeks.
I think this was the last slide with photos. The next one is the 3-week look ahead schedule. This is something that we show, that we go over weekly in the OAC meetings with the contractor. We go over monthly, the latest one with the LBC. And this is the tool that we use, to track week to week the schedule and, the upcoming activities and where they've slipped or not week to week. So we receive this on Tuesdays, compare it to last Tuesdays, note in the meeting minutes of the OAC meeting what's changed and why. You see the comments here are from our takeover contractor. They list 5 Star Building Corp. I mean, that's where the information for this comes from, because they're coordinating most closely with the subs. That goes to Beacon Consulting Group, who creates this. So as Richard went through, we had the delivery of the storefront material the previous week, but no crew available due to COVID. We're told that Friday we get a one crew, which will be doing the aluminum framing for those openings. And then the following Monday, we get the second crew to join them to start putting the glass in. The glass installation is supposed to just be a 1-week activity. They've listed 2 here. I talked to them about that Tuesday. With some weather coming next week and with the fits and starts getting started, they wanted to carry the 2 weeks, to be safe. But with it being such a critical activity, every day at the back end really, impacts the end date by a day. Moving down, we have the rest of the interior trades that are going on, miscellaneous carpentry and finishes, other than those that can't be done without the final windows in. So that includes some millwork, the porcelain tile. We do have the blue stone from the main lobby now ordered. The expected delivery date is March 1st. So that was a big milestone. And these other items are administrative items. So next slide is just an overall milestone schedule that takes the latest information from our takeover contractors overall schedule update just received last week and takes us through to the finish. So as Richard noted, we're keen to get the curtain wall and storefront installation started. That should be starting end of the week into next week and completing the following week. Final commissioning of the MEP systems, really needs to start once those windows are in earnest. I mean, we've been coordinating with commissioning throughout, but the final commissioning will start then and take us through final completion. Like I noted, the carpet, the MEP finishes, the final painting, all of that is waiting for the windows to be completed. Life safety testing, that's fire alarm, that comes after the completion of the finishes. That'll have us roll into the authorities having jurisdiction inspections, building department and the fire department. Onto furniture, fixtures, and equipment coordination. That's all of the things we have in storage, all of the AV, and then our latest projected substantial completion date from Beacon Consulting Group. That's 4/30/2021, and their projected final completion, which includes the completion of the site work for 5/28/21.
So each month over the last 3 months, they've slipped another month back. So it's pretty distressing, frankly. The original completion date that they projected was February 8th. We had hoped for February 1, but we accepted February 8th. That quickly became February 15th, which became March 15th, which became March 22nd, has now become April 30th. I think it was unrealistic by them to project that February date back in July when we signed them up, but they were the ones that came up with it. I think, if it had slipped back to March 1st, I would have said, yeah, that's really probably where it should have been in the first place. To go all the way back to April 30th is just a kind of a continued sign of not a lot of diligence about pursuing the schedule and getting things done on a timely basis. There's no other real, I don't want to try to sugarcoat it. It's been slower than it should be. So we are working with them. We're pushing them. We're pulling them. We're putting our arms around them. We're doing everything we can to pull them across the finish line. As Mike said, we're trying to do, as you can see here, some simultaneous activities with FF&E during the last month, which is the installation of the furniture. We'll do as much of that as we can, and just keep trying to get this thing done.
All right, thank you very much. I'll take questions from the select board initially, but just before we do, of course, I'm just going to let I know we all know this, but a certain caution has we just met in an executive session about certain remedies and some of the things we spoke about. So I just want to caution anyone that was in that executive session, be it the select board, library build committee, or the library trustees, on on the orientation of questions and comments. That's all. I don't want to compromise anything that we spoke about in executive session. All right, I guess, can you undo the share screen so I can see the general population here? Any questions from the select board? George, please.
Yes, just want to get an idea. I'm encouraged to see that the windows are scheduled to come in the next few weeks. That's been a critical path item that I've been asking about for a while. Do you think with the windows going in the next few weeks that the April 30th date is attainable? And secondly, on the schedule wise, if they are to have substantial completion on April 30th, is it realistic that they're going to get all that site work done within less than 30 days for a final completion of end of May?
I guess I'd answer by saying that they should be able to get it done by April 30th. The worry that I have is really, I guess, they really seem to have struggled to get subcontractors to respond on a timely basis. And I think it's a whole combination of factors. The building is not very well lit, so it's kind of a depressing place to work. I think the guys don't particularly want to work there. The site is a mess, which has only been hidden by the snow more recently. The organization of the site is such of the building is such that things are not easy to just go in and get the job done. I was there yesterday, and there were 12 guys there. They were kind of piddling along. So if that continues, it could well go beyond April 30th. I put in a call both to Travelers and to Beacon today to try to see where they were gauging, what they had to say. And honestly, they didn't call me back. So it gives you an indication of and I called them at 8 a.m. and said I had a briefing with the selectmen tonight. And neither of them got back to me because I wanted to ask that exact question of them, because they have much more control than we do over the pace of the work. So I remain hopeful, but I don't remain necessarily optimistic that April 30th is achievable. With respect to that month, fortunately, some of the site work doesn't have to really just wait until April 30th. And we usually get, as we all know who live here, decent weather starting April 15th. So if they have 6 weeks to do the site work, I think, yes, they could probably achieve that simultaneous with the last couple of weeks of construction and then another month.
Okay, thank you. Paul, did I see you raise your hand, or is that?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Okay, any other questions from the select board? And then I'll take questions from the general public. All right. Again, I always ask, looks like Frank Orlando has a question.
Yes, and this might be, I'm looking at your 3-week look ahead. When I reflect back to the last 3-week look ahead, there was a different vendor for the glazing. So I was wondering why that changed.
Mike, do you want to comment on it? I think that may just be the installer listed at Eastland.
Yeah, it's Eastfield, and
Eastfield.
they've been listed as Eastfield all along. Frank, I don't know.
Not on the 25th.
Yeah.
Well,
if it
What
was
was listed there, Frank?
It was DeBrino.
Oh, so Frank, DeBrino is doing the caulking.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant, DeBrino. But you're showing Eastfield doing the caulking now too.
And they have
Eastfield's responsible for the caulking within the system, DeBrino for the perimeter of the system, so they both will actually have a hand in that one. That's a filed sub bid issue.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the public? Okay. Yeah, I don't see any. Just making sure, because some people actually physically raise their hand, and actually tonight's meeting is taking up 3 screens for me.
Yeah, I don't see anybody else.
Okay. Without that, I guess thank you both very much. We definitely appreciate the help. I've been seeing a fair amount of correspondence going on. I think you've been pretty diligent with that. And again, thank you very much for that. And thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, without any further ado, I believe next up is agenda item number 6. Consideration of FY 2022 omnibus budget and 2021 annual town meeting warrant articles. We have the Historic Commission, the Elder Housing Budget, Council on the Aging, and Planning Board warrant articles. I'll begin in the order that's in the agenda, and that's the Historic Commission budget and capital item. Who is here to speak on that? Peggy, is that you?
Yeah, it should be Peggy, but I don't see her.
I see her.
Peggy. I'll unmute her. Hold on. There you go, Peggy.
I think you have to unmute yourself
You
as
have to
well.
unmute yourself. There you go.
Hold on, I'm trying.
Gotcha.
I think actually that Jean Goldfield from our commission was going to speak on the our regular budget.
Gotcha.
Are you there, Jean?
You should unmute yourself now, Jean. There you go.
Okay, how's that?
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to present our request for FY22 regular budget. We have a small budget of $1,300. It has 2 line items. One refers to the annual maintenance of the Cyrus Dallin memory statue, and the second is a continuation of our sign program, a historic sign program. And we are maintaining the same amount, request amount from last year.
Okay. Good. And how about the capital item? Talk about the restore. I'm sorry. All right.
Jim Guarino from our commission was going to do a brief presentation about that.
Carol, there you go. Jim, you should be able to unmute as well.
It's just so small, I can barely see. Repair and restore two stationary signs.
Apologize, having a problem with the mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So we're proposing to restore the two tercentenary signs, the one at Douse Corner at Coolidge in North Main, and the other at the Route 27 and 16 split. They were both installed in 1930 and have deteriorated over the years. They've been subject to corrosion, and one has a broken post which requires repair. So we sent out 4 invitations to qualified restoration firms and received 2 proposals back. One declined to bid, one didn't respond. So the 2 proposals that we received were from Cassidy Brothers Forge in Georgetown and from another from Daedalus Restoration in Watertown. They both have experience restoring these signs for the state under the DOT's former program that they had in place, where they were restoring these in Western Mass as a pilot program. And so they've stopped doing that indefinitely, and I reached out to the DOT to see if they could assist, but they were not participating at this time. So we sent out the DOT spec for restoring the tercentenary signs to these 4 vendors, and 2 of them have submitted proposals based on the Mass DOT specifications for restoring these signs. And so we received one from Cassidy Brothers, as I said, to restore the 2 signs would be about $9,200 each, or $18,400 for the 2 of them. And Daedalus proposal would be for $12,000 and $14,000 for the one with the broken post, for a total of $26,000. And there's some considerations that the Cassidy proposal doesn't acknowledge. They don't acknowledge the broken post, whereas Daedalus does. But if you consider the 2, they're fairly close in price. We believe those are the real costs to restore those 2 signs. As part of the restoration, they would remove them, take them to their shop, remove the old paint, they'd repair the substrate, the metal, and then apply new paint under the Mass DOT spec, and then replace the signs back at the 2 sites. That's just a basic summary of what would be involved. There's an extensive amount of work and time that goes into restoring the signs, and it's a pretty interesting consideration. So.
Well, I have one question about this. What I'm
Sure.
gonna say almost sounds like I'm joking, but in some ways I'm not. Is it worth this investment if in 8 years we're gonna be costing out a replacement for Quarcentennial signs?
Well, that's a good question. And so one of the approaches that we looked at minimally repairing the signs, retaining some of the old paint, since the signs themselves are historic, they're 90 years old now. And that was not recommended by either firm. So the Mass DOT spec acknowledges this issue, and the paints and coatings that they use are designed to last 30 years. That's what we've been told, that the repair would be a 30-year lifespan.
I see that, but like I said, I assume in 8 years we will be costing out new signs. I don't know if they replace these, if these out, but I hope we get Quadcentennial, if I'm saying that correctly, signs in a few years. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add something to what Jim's saying. I don't know if you had a chance to review the materials that we sent out to you. The signs themselves are now considered historic artifacts.
Yeah.
They were placed in 1930 when the let me see if I can get the name right, Mass Bay Colony Tercentenary Commission was formed. I can't say what the state will do in 9 years, but I think the chances that they're going to come along and take out all these signs and replace them is really slim. And the fact that they are historic artifacts themselves is why the cost to restore them is so high, because it's not just a regular highway sign that you might replace or have pretty standard procedures for. There are very specific specifications for doing it.
Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah, Paul.
So as I think everybody knows, I coordinate in my job with state officials. And I mention that because I've been involved in meetings at which there's been discussion that a feature of these signs is considered by some to be racist. And so I'm referring particularly to the seal of the Commonwealth, which is the centerpiece of these signs. It's in the front top of the signs. So the General Court has passed a law that's created a committee to review and possibly update that symbol for the Commonwealth. I won't go through all the reasons why certain people are offended by the symbol, but because that's a long presentation all by itself. But the idea is that to change that, and there is a sense that if it's not changed, some of these symbols will be taken down by vigilantes, if you would call it that. And I've heard the argument that these are historic features. And so we've seen that argument play out nationwide, where statues of George Washington and Tom Jefferson and even Abraham Lincoln have been destroyed, even though they are historical in nature, because some people are offended by different things. So the state is working on addressing the issues that are being raised, these claims and allegations and feelings and so on. And there is a committee that's looking into this. So I think it might make sense to let that play out a little bit before we invest in restoring that part of the sign and see where the Commonwealth comes out at the end of the day on what improvements, if any, it wants to make. Perhaps it won't change and leave this as a historic symbol. On the other hand, there's some very strong pressures to make changes.
All right. Does anyone from the select board or from the historic commission want to respond to that?
That is interesting information. I had heard about the discussion about the state seal, but I hadn't projected that out to the signs or heard anything about it in relation to the signs. So that's new information to us as a commission. And the Mass DOT hadn't mentioned it when Jim contacted them.
John Higley has his hand raised. I don't know if John has a comment.
Okay, go ahead, John. Sorry, I like the electronic hand raising, but okay.
That's what he has. He has his hand raised electronically.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah, this time I do. I just actually I think the points that have just been made in terms of their value historically, I think those are, I support that completely. I really think restoring these signs or replacing them, but I think the historical story that's told by these, whatever it is, about 360 or so signs around the state is fantastic, and it ought to be told. And so from that view, I very much support restoration. However, I also think the point that Paul has raised is really important, and we ought to delay and not go ahead now. I've been an advocate of restoring the signs in Sherborn. There's a rating of the signs around the state, and the ones in Sherborn are in the top, I think, 20% in terms of condition. Even in their dilapidated state, they're still a lot better than some. But I think it makes sense for us to delay this until the issues that Paul has raised are addressed.
I see another hand raised by, I think it's Susie.
Was Sue Tyler?
Susie.
Yep,
Yes.
Susie Tyler.
Yeah, go ahead, Sue. Oh, there. Go down.
You got me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Question, I might have missed it. Who actually owns the signs? And then if there is a question of the signs being replaced because of a historical symbol now having new meaning, if that's the case and signs are replaced, can they go to the historical commission or the museum in town so that they're no longer lost to history and being destroyed?
Could I try answering that?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Who owns the signs?
The idea would be that a feature of the sign would be replaced, not the whole signs. In other words, the way the signs are designed, they're made out of metal, and there's a symbol on the signs that some people are offended by. And the idea would be, if there was a new symbol, the new symbol would go on the old signs rather than to have signs with the symbol that some people are offended by. So it's not a question of throwing the old ones out. It's a question of updating the old ones.
It's not, if I may, it's not updating, it's altering the historical sign. So is it, again, who owns the signs? And does the town of Sherborn have the ability to say, no, these are historic signs. We want to put them into our museum. They can be interpreted by everyone that visits them with the story as to what it was when they were created, what it is now, and why they were replaced. Because if they're going to put a new symbol on the top center of these signs, they're altering a historic sign. That's all.
But I think that also, that is also discussion another time. I'd like to kind of keep this discussion focused on maybe, do we approve or do we support this capital for restoration? Because I think it's a whole separate thing. Getting bids to change the sign and do whatever. And that's maybe, I'll leave that up to the members of the commission that are on this call of basically, given what you've heard, you still want to advance this capital item and have us either, and I know the select board's not recommending yet. We're listening to presentations, and at the end of everything, we're going to recommend. But maybe it's just thought for the historic commission. Do you think that you want to still advance this capital items to improve these signs, Peggy?
Well, first of all, I have a question for Paul. Paul, do you have any sense of what kind of time frame this discussion is on and when the state is likely to make any kind of a decision?
According to the things I overheard, this is on a fast track because there's some people who are very upset about it. And so the state is trying to address what they call institutional racism and systematic racism across many different categories. This category has to do with indigenous people. There are things that things that have been said about the symbols and the way the symbols are placed that is, well, let me just say it's considered offensive to certain people.
I
So it's a fast track.
understand that discussion. I think as to whether we want to continue to pursue this year, this fiscal year, that perhaps we need to discuss it as a commission at our next meeting. Paul, do you have any contacts at the Department of Transportation who might give us any additional insight as to what their plans might be with the signs?
I think DOT is hands off on this. This is general court and governor's office and all kinds of community activists.
It's
it's
a policy
not
thing.
a DOT.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm sorry.
It's not a DOT issue per se, but the idea is to get it done with it no longer than a year, and hopefully it's on a fast track.
And then
Eric,
who would
can I make
be
a suggestion?
responsible for replacing the symbols on the signs?
We'll finish up this conversation
Yeah.
dialogue, but maybe I kind of want to rein in a little bit, and maybe Paul could visit the historic commission meeting, and or you guys can kind of get a little more advice offline on that.
Eric, one more thing. Susie Wheelwright does have her hand up.
Oh,
So
Susie.
let me unmute her and
physical hands.
give her a chance to say something here. But one thing I agree, Eric, I think the discussion's gone off track when we're discussing budgets. So I think they need to discuss it and come back to us and decide whether they want to pursue this further.
And Paul brought up a good point, so it's food for thought for the commission. Yes, Susie?
Just a practical point. I don't know that everyone realizes it, but these signs are not going to be easy to alter in that they are cast iron.
No, I realize that. I was thinking about that the whole time because you can't really.
Right. I don't think alteration is practical, whatever your political feelings or your historic sensibility. And I do think we do need to take this back to the commission and have a discussion and get back to you at some point.
Absolutely.
So
Without
thank
going too much,
you all.
I bet you they'll form a cap, some kind of cap thing that goes over it, by the way. But anyways.
Yeah,
all right.
So let's move to the next.
So that being said, that's enough for the historic commission there. Next is elder housing budget. I see Kitty is on the line here. If someone could unmute her, please.
Where are you hiding, Kitty?
I got her, Jeff. And if she could just unmute herself, then we'll be good. She disappeared.
Yeah, she was on the left side of my screen a minute ago.
Kitty, if you could hit the unmute button, then we could.
I got that.
Oh, there we
Okay.
go. We got you.
Yeah, turn
Okay.
your camera back on if you could and unmute.
There we go. Oh,
Okay.
there we go.
Okay, hopefully the dog will be quiet. If I may make a quick statement, if that's okay. Number one, we were going to be three or more at the meeting. So I did post us. So if I could just quickly go down the membership. I know Mike Kickham is here. Can you just say yes? Or raise your hand?
I've got to unmute these people. So Mike, I see you.
Hey, Mike.
And then Steve Petty.
Hold on.
And I haven't seen David Curtis or Janet Walsh. So
Janet's on here. Hold on, I got Janet.
Okay.
And who's it? David. There's no David Petty on here.
Oh, David. Yeah, okay, thank you, Janet. So we are now in session. Gentlemen, elder housing at Woodhaven is thriving. All the units are full. We have a strong waiting list. Thanks to the bond issue that has benefited Woodhaven. The units have been updated when they were vacated. I believe we have 5 more to do. You will see as Mike Kickham, our treasurer, and Steve Petty, who oversees the buildings, present our budget for fiscal 22. SEHC addresses maintenance issues, this being the re-roofing of the 3 buildings. The rents cover all the expenses, including the bond issue and the fee for service we pay Sherborn. I would like to acknowledge a retired member of our committee, Joe Meany, who has been our buildings and equipment guru. Joe stepped down last June. Fortunately, he didn't take the keys with him. He has been extremely helpful in sharing his knowledge with Steve. The residents have had a rough year, as we all have. They have had to adopt to the closure of their community room, wearing masks from their apartment door out, socializing 6 feet apart, etc. Council on Aging, Board of Health, and especially the COVID-19 Emergency Committee, and our manager, Claire McLennan, have been very attentive to the residents' needs. So I'm through. You don't have to hear from me anymore, but Mike and Steve will take over the budget. Oh, one more thing. I did put in a placeholder for 50,000 for our stabilization fund, but I don't know if we will be using that or not. We should know within the month.
Thank you very much, Kitty. And I guess the one thing I'd like to ask is you have a fairly detailed and a lengthy budget here. And maybe focus on those things as I think 1 or 2 line items that are, substantially changed from previous years, and keep that maybe the focus of the discussion. And then questions will come up as, we'll ask questions as appropriate.
Okay.
Eric, Eddie.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Eric. I was going to ask that we do exactly that. The major increase in the budget is the last item under maintenance, and that is $90,000 for re-roofing all 3 buildings. And it's something that will be handled within our operations this year. And other than that, other than a few minor increases, you're not going to see any major changes. So I think if we could just let people go through it and ask questions as they come up, rather than go line by line. George?
Yes, I have a question about the roof. If that's your major increase, a roof, I would suspect, should be considered a capital item. Shouldn't you be? That shouldn't really be in an operating budget, I would think, because of the useful life of a roof.
We are fortunate enough in this budget to be able to handle it within our operating budget. We actually looked back in some older notes and found that it had been listed as a capital budget, and they showed last year, this year, and next year as the time period that it should be occurring. And here it is. We discovered that we do need a roof. But because we feel we can handle it, we don't really see it necessary at this point. And we do need a roof. So
I'm just saying that the handling of it, maybe Sharon could share her thoughts on it as well. I think something that's got a roof is something that you might want to put a separate line item, even if you want to pay for it all in 1 year. I don't think you want to include it in an operating budget because it's not an operating item.
Well, I'll leave that to the financial gurus.
I second George's input, because you want to amortize and depreciate it over its useful life.
But
also, operating funds are only good for a year, so you have to make sure you expend it. One of the advantages of having a capital appropriation is that if you don't get it done in a year, your funds are still available as well.
Even if you don't need to pay for it like through debt or anything, it still makes more sense to treat it as a capital item, because you don't, as Jeff said, you got to amortize it, depreciate it. It's a capital asset. It's not an operating expense.
So you're recommending that we have a warrant article for this?
That's a good
I don't know, because I'm just saying treatment of it on your books needs to be, it should be treated as you're purchasing an asset in a roof, not an expense, if that makes sense to you.
Because it does, but and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm new to elder housing. We have the ability, I believe, within our budget, that if for some reason the roofing isn't completed this coming fiscal year, we can encumber the funds. We can hold them over until we're finished with the project. We've done this on previous they weren't major items, but they were $18,000 items, and they weren't completed in time. We just encumbered the funds, held them over, and finished the project. And I think we can do that with this.
Okay. Perhaps that's so.
Can I ask Sharon's advice on this? I just want to get her idea. I'm just, I know it's a little different because you have your own funds, but.
Yeah, it is a little different because it's a revolving fund, but let me do a little research on this and I can get back to you on what the proper treatment is. So I can dive into this tomorrow and get back to Stephen and.
I just want it treated properly on your balance
Okay.
sheet and
Okay.
and expense wise.
Like,
Right now,
I
I think
will-
Jeff's in the agreement with me.
I've seen capital items have been paid for by free cash. You don't have to bond, so I don't see you could do something similar here.
Jane Matarazzo is on the call. I asked, I wanted to ask, has this been presented to advisory yet?
They've received it, but we have not made a presentation with them.
Yeah, so I think we should just go with, have advisory look into with Sharon, look
Okay.
into how it should be funded and put on the books.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And then it'll come
Definitely
back.
do some research on
We
it.
have a joint session whenever the advisory public hearing is, the select board's in session, so we can vote on this aspect of it then perhaps.
Right, yeah, and I think tonight was just for comments anyway. We're not really voting on anything. So I think that's just something I think you guys should research. I think your budget looks great. I think you guys are doing a great job out there. So it's a matter of just making sure things are accounted for, like a long-term asset like this is taken care of correctly on your books.
Are there any other questions on anything else from the select board on this?
I do. I want to thank Joe Meany too. He's a rock star, and I worked with him when I was on advisory. And so thank you for all you've done for the town, Joe.
Here, here, here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know the only question I would always get whenever I visited Woodhaven is like, why don't we get the good sports channels? Because they're have we ever thought of why they charge a commercial rate for the cable TV in the common room versus a residential rate? They charge the same at a bar. So apparently if you go to a bar or a restaurant that has cable TV, they actually charge a higher rate than the residences because they're considered to make a profit off of that. Whereas here, they're not making a profit off it, but it's a common area room there. So the cable service for the common areas is huge. And then I'm always complaints they don't get all the sports channels.
Eric, when you renew the cable TV contracts, you can write that in that the community room should have residential rates.
Or can we just increase it here a little bit, whatever it takes? Like,
Eric, Frank Jenkins had a question.
No, I have no question at all. I just want to congratulate Joe Meany. Many of you probably don't know, but Joe was on the first Woodhaven committee back in what year, Joe?
Oh, hold on, let me unmute Joe.
He can't remember. He's getting senile, right?
Well, there was a nonprofit group committee that started in the late 70s.
That's right. And we built Woodhaven in 1981, and Joe was our on the committee at that time. And I guess except for a couple of years in there between, he's been on the committee ever since. And Woodhaven is basically very thankful for having Joe serve on that committee that long period of time.
Yes, we are.
So, congratulations, Joe.
Here, here.
Thank you.
I think Chuck stole your chair. All right. Anything else from either general public on this or anything else from the select board? So I kind of want to, it's pretty straightforward budget. Everything else seems pretty similar outside of those 3 buildings and the increase on the cable TV. Is there anything else?
I'll just make a general comment that Woodhaven seems very well managed, very well run, very well taken care of. And in part, to have it work as well as it does, it needs our financial support, and in terms of supporting their needs and their effort for a new roof and for the maintenance that they do. So I think we should appreciate what they've accomplished.
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely couldn't agree more. All right.
And one more thing, I created their select board goals. One of the goals was to do an on-site insight assessment of Woodhaven, just so we know, the status of all the infrastructure. So that would show the roof, but it would also maybe other things, because one of the things they do is they prepare a 5-year capital plan for every building that they review. And Steve, you're probably familiar with that from working with Sean, I know, but anyway, that's one of our goals too.
And
Now,
if I may just interject here, it would be interesting to compare their take on Woodhaven versus Fran Hawks, who did a study back in, I believe it was 89. And it's amazing how her spreadsheet for capital items has worked out.
Absolutely.
Just a question, how long has the roof when was the last time the roof was replaced?
I'm gonna guess 1982.
Yep.
Oh, really? So it's lasted 40 years?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
It's new. Yep.
Yeah, got the good out of it. Definitely got the good out of it. We'll send the library roof contractor right over. All right.
Thank you, Kitty.
Thank you.
Without any further ado, I'd like to move on to the Council of the Aging budget warrant. I think this one's Sue Kelleher, correct?
Yep.
Let me make sure.
Hi, Sue. Yep, unmute Sue.
Yep. Thank you.
So the same thing, if that's okay, go over kind of high level and then
Yep.
focus on any major differences or major significant purchases.
Yep. I just want to recognize our chair, Chris is here, Chris Winterfeld, vice chair, Tricia Caldecott, and treasurer Jerry Horn. And we were basically asked to keep things at level funding, which we did. We just switched a couple of things in our staffing. Last year we had a position for 5 hours a week, which we eliminated and put into advocate position, bringing that position up from 16 to 19 hours a week. And then adding another 2 hours to the assistant director, but everything is level funded. And try to be, respectful of what was asked of us. And then we also have 2 warrant articles. The first one is to do funding for an architectural plan for a possible senior center. And then the second one, so that one would be to hire a firm to develop plans so we could do some fundraising and develop a capital campaign. And the second article would be to do the engineering feasibility study of the caustic property for a possible location for us.
I have 3 articles in your report.
Oh, I dropped one of them.
Okay,
I
thank you.
deleted it because circumstances changed.
Which one did you drop, the architectural or the engineering?
No, there were originally 3. And we were gonna look at we had gone and talked to the community center for possibly leasing that space out for a year, and of course that wouldn't be in our budget, but we are moving up into the select board's office. So we do have a little bit more space and we just felt like, why move twice? So
it's in our packet, there's 3 articles here. It says architectural study for senior center, engineering feasibility study for caustic property, and then feasibility study of community center. Okay, so the feasibility of community center is the one.
Right.
Got it. Sorry.
All right. Any other questions from on the select board, at least for Sue? And I'll take it from the general.
Well, I guess, we could, I don't think it's for discussion tonight, but I'm not in favor of investing in these architectural studies yet. I believe that what we need to do is assess all the options available for a location to the senior center and including the community center. So we could possibly have funding for an architectural study, but not assigned to a specific location.
Okay, because we also did all of those visits that we were to do. We talked to the developers on Coolidge Street. We talked to the community center.
Jeff, on that note, Jeff, I want to agree with you on this because, well, not necessarily agree with you, but I want to somehow get the COA, the library, community center, and the historical society all together so we can talk about space planning. I don't think everybody's working in silos right now and it's not productive. I think we need to look at all our resources and all our needs and decide what makes the most sense for town.
And Jeff, that's consistent with some of the goals that we came up with for the select board. Is that correct?
Exactly right, Eric.
So I think everybody, you know, the COAs were, and I applaud you. I know you're looking for a senior center, and we talked about the caustic property and probably what makes the most sense. But I also think we need to do a general plan because the historical society is without a home right now as well.
Yeah.
And the library is being finished, and I want to talk about their space and what's available. I think the community center may have some space that maybe a long-term lease with somebody would make sense. So I think and we can pull this together, Jeff, I think get a meeting with everyone somehow to do some brainstorming as to what makes the most sense space planning wise for what we have for town resources and go from there.
I agree, and I would add advisory, you know, could dedicate a person to the team as well.
Absolutely.
I'm very supportive of a community center and of the senior center, but I just want to do what George said.
That's fine.
Well, if I could, I just want to say that we've been working towards a senior center for a long time. I think at least 10 years, maybe 15 years. And this is nice to see a new effort coming forward. I don't think we should try to deflect the energy that's coming from the Council on Aging here. Rather, I think we should work with it. And I don't think the decision for where the senior center should go should be determined by simply economics or, you know, how do we fit as many functions as possible in the same space and all those kind of concepts. I think the seniors fit into a category all by themselves, and they need a facility that's dignified and respectful of their contribution to the town. So I'm all in favor of communication, but I think we need to defer to some extent to what they want to do, not what we as managers want to have them do.
Just respectfully, Paul, I do want to bring up the point that when it comes to tax rate, I want you to remember that what you just said, because we talk all the time about limiting what we're spending. So I think we do have to take economics into every decision.
Of course we do.
So.
All right. So this thing, reining it back into the Council of the Aging budget warrant articles, I guess, is there any more comments or questions from the general audience? I don't see it.
Trisha Caldecott has her hand up.
Sorry.
Let me unmute her. Here she is. Oh, go ahead, Trisha.
Hi. Well, I just wanted to make a comment about the remark that we're in silos, and I would just assure you we are not. We have spoken with the community center. We have spoken multiple times with the library. We are very aware of what the town footprint is and how it's evolving right now. And we've done a lot of due diligence on trying to figure out what would meet our needs. And I would just like to echo what Selectman Durensis said. And, you know, economics aside and budgets and all that, we do have specific needs, and we have been doing a lot of research on what would best suit our needs of the demographic that we serve. And that has been going on, and it's been 15 to 20 years, just by the way, that we've been looking for a center. And we've been following to the letter the suggestions and requirements by the board to go and speak with different organizations in town. And we really do feel that everything is pushing us towards the caustic property. We have done an immense amount of volunteer hours of time and energy doing this kind of research. And we have spoken with all of the stakeholders, and it is all pushing us towards the caustic property. So an interim center at the community center, we have found may not make sense at all right now. And we just would urge you to kind of move us to that next step. We think that if we go, we'll discuss the articles next. But I would say that I would like you to revisit the concept of kind of getting off the dime now, because we truly have done our research.
Hasn't been presented to us yet.
The one thing I would like to add, though, is I know, and I actually agree with Jeff and George. My problem is, though, is like, I think, do we have a mechanism to execute it? So is there someone who's going to take ownership, take charge, do this, talk to the Council of Aging, see what, get knowledge what the plans are to some degree. And I agree with you, Tricia, that definitely Council of Aging has done their homework, but there are kind of silos here, and unintentional silos to some degree. And I think maybe at an executive level, we've fallen short on actually having someone take ownership of this. I know, like, for example, I've been consumed by the library since I've been stepped on this board. So I know, and I think all of us have certain time consumption things here. I don't know if there's a staff member or a select board member that would actually do that, take ownership, manage the study, do what it takes. Otherwise, without that, you're going to have someone like the Council of Aging that they're going to take charge. And that's what they did. They actually took charge. They're finding their own solution here. And I can't blame them for doing that. To some extent, I applaud them for doing that. And I think it's hard to hold them back if we're not being the ones taking charge and actually saying, like, okay, let's bring the silos together.
Well, that's what Jeff and I are trying to do now.
Yeah.
Okay. That's with all the different needs at the same time. So I just unmuted Christina Winterfeld. She had her hand up.
Yeah, thanks, George. I don't know if you selectmen recall, but we did come to you several months ago and we got a full board approval of going forward with the senior center. Each and every one of you voted to, and this was with Chuck Yan on the board too, were in favor of that. We then went to 5 Washington Street and looked at that property, and we did not get the go ahead to do that. And that was a older building which needed some renovations, but it was on the town campus. Our board was pretty excited about that. And then you put us on the search for all the other areas in town. As Tricia just said, we did our due diligence. We've looked at all these other properties, reported that back to the selectmen. We've kind of on a wild goose chase led by your board. And George Morrill, you came to the 5 Washington Street property, and you did say to us, give Caustic a property.
Yes.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Now we're coming back to you, and you're saying, keep looking, keep looking. Well, okay.
Can I interject here for a second, Christina? I actually would support, let's do a feasibility study for the Caustic property and see what the best use of that property is. I'm not saying I'm not saying we shouldn't consider that. I said that's one of the options. I want to look at all the options we have in town and our resources as a town as a whole.
Okay.
Not just automatically say the Caustic property is definitely for a senior center. I think we need to do a study on that property.
George, we're not saying automatically either. We've looked at 4 or 5 or 6 other places. We've gone to all the senior centers all over the local communities. I think we have done our due diligence. Now we want to look at the Caustic property. Now we need you all to help us put together a proper I guess building committee.
Correct. And the building committee would look at all the options in town, Christina. We're not steering you in one direction, but we have not done a financial analysis, a construction analysis, or a needs analysis in an integrated fashion yet, with different committees in town involved. I'm still talking, thank you, including the advisory committee. So that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think Jeff's got a good point here, Christina, that we need to see, and I think maybe that's what our first article is. What is the need for what's the right size senior center? I think that's is that what Article 1 is really looking for, is what is the right size building that you guys, that the COA needs for a senior center?
Correct.
I want to pull this back around the budget. I do, because really we have Article 1 here that they're proposing a $10,000. Looks like they don't have an estimate for Article 2 around the budgetary thing. Perhaps I'll see how full our next agenda item is, our next agenda for the next select board meeting. I make a standalone item about, initiating basic space needs. I think that's, I still actually, I actually understand the COA's frustration in this. You know, I really do. And I get why we want to do this right, but I'm going to do a standalone item. As long as next week or whatever, 2 weeks is not too full, I'll at least try to do it in February. And to make a standalone, again, the space needs. We'll assign someone to it and we'll structure it. We've talked about it forever. And I still applaud the COA for at least, taking action on what they've done.
Right. And Eric, I think in that discussion, we need to invite the Historical Society to discuss their needs for their museum. And I think we need to have a discussion with the library about the needs for their lower level and the community center.
I think Frank Jenkins has his hand up also because he's been involved.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Just as a reminder too, last October, I believe it was, Susan presented to you at your request a statement of the need that the Council on Aging saw for a place, a senior center, to carry out its various programs. It was very detailed. It identified the space, the activities of the senior center, of the Council on Aging, and the space requirements they had recommended to be able to carry out those activities. So as you meet next month on this or something, you ought to make sure that that report is distributed and available to you.
Thanks, Frank. One thing I just do have to question is that this calls for a 5,000 square foot senior center. I think when you were looking at the Washington Street property, that was like a 2,500 square foot building. So I just want to make sure it's right sized and not too big or too small.
That's right. Exactly. Good.
I would like to have the advisory committee have a representative on the team also.
Yeah.
Great.
We have a representative.
Good.
Okay. Okay. Just staying focused on the budget. It sounds like that's most of the discussion on the budget. At least everyone knows what's going to be discussed about, and everyone knows what the hot items are. Okay. If there's not anything else on that, I have to keep this going and moving on to the planning board warrant articles. Is it going to be Gino or Marianne? Who wants to volunteer for this?
Gino on here, to be honest with you. Is he on?
Yeah.
It's not John Higley. Is John?
Oh, Gino's on. Hang on.
Oh, there's Gino.
I'm on and Marion's on. I
Hey,
believe
Gino.
Marion's gonna go first, but she's muted.
Hey, Gino, are you like in the West Coast? Why is it light outside?
The sun always shines on Sherborn Town Hall.
Seriously, look at the windows.
It's a virtual background of my office, that's all.
Oh, that's awesome.
Taken during the day.
Could have fooled me.
I see you, Marion. Can you unmute yourself now if I click it? See if you can unmute yourself now.
Thank you. Thank you. You had me muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's good. So Gino, is it okay if I go first
Absolutely.
now that I'm unmuted? Okay, great. And I'm going to want to share my screen, just so you know.
Okay, hang on. I gotta cause that to happen.
Yeah, just let me share my screen when I want to. Okay, so this warrant article is regarding the open space subdivision bylaw that we happily had passed at town meeting last August. And you'll recall that this the final version of this article passed after about a 3-year discussion in which we really went through it with a fine tooth comb over and over, and a lot of input from the town. And one of the bits of input from the town during discussion of this article was that a few people were concerned that by having the houses confined to 40% of a property would cause houses to be closer together nearer the street and would spoil the scenic view. So in response to that, we built in a feature in the current bylaw, and I'm going to share my screen now so we can look at it.
You should be able to do that.
Yeah, here we go. You see that? Right, okay. The current bylaw says, for that reason that I just gave you, we have a provision that requires the frontage of any lot in an open space subdivision, any lot that contacts an existing road, to have the same frontage requirements on the existing road as you would normally have in that zoning district. On internal subdivision roads, there's no frontage requirement. And any lot can have vehicular access that is a driveway either to the existing road or the internal open space subdivision road. And that all looked pretty good until we went to theoretically apply it to somewhat smaller lots in Sherborn that are totally developable as subdivisions. You'll look around the assessor's maps and you'll see that there are many lots in town that are greater than is needed in terms of acreage for a single house, although usually a single house is there, like in this example. But more than one lot could fit there. And for example, in this theoretical example I put up here is actually not entirely theoretical. It's a real lot in Sherborn. Some of the details have been changed to protect the innocent. But say it's a 7-acre parcel or a 6-acre parcel in a 2-acre zone. You can definitely, it has 200 feet of frontage, and that's what's required in that zoning district. A conventional subdivision can definitely be built here because all you need for a conventional subdivision is enough space to put a road into the property. And a road, subdivision road with its flare at the end is about 70 feet. So there's plenty of room here. So this definitely could be a conventional subdivision. And if it were, it might look something like this. The point being that a conventional subdivision does require the existing frontage for the zoning district, but the frontage is created by the creation of a new road. You create new frontage. And in this case, the frontage on the existing road is just irrelevant. We don't pay attention to that. So how would we want this lot to be an open space subdivision? Say it has conservation land, it has wetlands, we'd have good reason then. And by state law and by our new bylaw, we could make it an open space subdivision and protect this back part of the property and put 3 houses toward the front. But with the existing road frontage requirement in our open space subdivision bylaw, we can't do an open space subdivision here. And looking around town, there are a lot of lots like this that collectively would make a big difference in the preservation of land, of natural land, and say the maintenance of groundwater resources and all the other reasons that we passed the open space subdivision bylaw. But we can't do it on a lot like this because of the frontage requirement on the existing lot. So what we're proposing is to eliminate that existing road frontage requirement so that you could have a subdivision something like this. We already have no frontage requirement on the new subdivision road, so the subdivision road can be a lot shorter and use much less paving than in a conventional subdivision. And if you could do the same sort of thing that you can do in a conventional subdivision and put in a road and not have the huge frontage requirement on the existing road, you could do an open space subdivision here. And that would put the 2 kinds of subdivisions, at least at the get-go, on an even footing with each other. And from there, we could apply the bylaw or make a special permit, either way, but they should be on an equal permit in the beginning, on equal footing, I should say, from the beginning. So what about the concern that houses may be nearer the road and spoil the scenic view? Well, there are at least 3 elements here that would protect against that. One is that the open space subdivision bylaw already has a 100-foot setback. That's much larger than a regular subdivision would have. And we've added 2 more provisions. One is that all of the lots, all of the houses, no matter where they are, can only put their driveway to the subdivision road and not to the existing road. So you can't have more driveways coming out here. And the second provision is that we want to require a buffer zone within that 100-foot setback between the road and the setback line that would be part of the lot, but would require a buffer between the road and the setback of at least 50 feet wide. And for a lot of lots, there already are trees and shrubs there, and you have a buffer. For those that aren't, we would require planting. So here's how the new bylaw looks. We say now that there's no requirement for lot frontage in an open space subdivision on either kind of road. But if you have a lot that abuts both roads, the driveway can only go to the internal subdivision road. And the same would be true of common driveways. And then the important thing that we've added is a 50-foot buffer zone in the setback area between the road and the 100-foot setback line, so that no houses can be nearer than 100 feet from the road. And there would be a vegetated buffer to preserve the scenic quality of the road. And I think you'll find if you go around on the assessor's map and look at the properties that could be subdivisions, and incidentally, by state law, any division of a lot that's not an approval not required, any division of a lot that doesn't have the required frontage for 2 lots or 3 lots has to be a subdivision if you're going to develop it. And any 2 or more lots is considered a subdivision. So that's a given. But if you look at all the lots that could be a 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever lot subdivision, you'll find that this bylaw, I think, does protect the scenic quality of the road and allows us to basically fulfill the goals of the open space subdivision bylaw. So that's the warrant article.
Thank you very much, Marion. Can you take down the share screen, please? Actually, just
Sure.
see the general audience here. So I have one question before I take questions from the rest of the board. Is these provisions, you kind of put them on to fix some things from the previous article of last year. Are any of these? I know when you did the open space subdivision last year, it was based on other towns and precedents. Is this based on have other communities done what you're proposing to do here?
I have not seen this in other communities, but other communities did not have the requirement on that the open space subdivision lots on the existing road have the full frontage requirement of the zoning district. That's something that we put in response to comments from Sherborn, but you won't find that in other subdivision, open space subdivision bylaws, no.
What is their frontage? So I don't know any other town. Do they actually say such as like 1/3 normal, or do they actually just leave it pretty open ended? You can pork chop things.
As far as I know, they leave it open ended. I can't think of any that require frontage. There are some open space subdivision bylaws that do require a 50-foot frontage on any of the roads, open space, on the existing or internal subdivision roads.
Okay.
But that's the only requirement I've seen.
All right. Any questions from the board? Let's see. Any questions of the general public? I had one other question. Is oh no, never mind. I'll take that back. All right, this is good food for thought. Thank you very much, Marianne. Gino, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, not on this.
Okay.
I think John Higley is on the meeting too. Do you have anything, John?
I think, there you go.
I can't believe someone opened the door for me. This is really just swapping sentences so that we get so it's saying the same thing that was intended. It's really just swapping the sentences to tighten up the language a little. It's not changing anything. But if this language is not changed, basically the lots that Marion refers to, like the example one she showed, the others that may be similar to it around town, have been available for development by the conventional method for decades and decades. So it's not gonna, this is not opening the door to anything in terms of development. It's not good, if they've been available for this, the development as a conventional lot for decades and decades. So this language just puts the open space one on the same keel, starting at the same place in terms of it being applicable. It's all it's doing. It's not gonna increase the likelihood of something getting developed.
All right, Rick, did you have something to add?
Yeah, hi, this is Rick Novak of Nation Hill Road, and I'm wearing my individual citizen hat, not my former planning board hat or current ZBA hat. I think it's a good idea to try to encourage these open space subdivisions. The problem is that for every time one is written, the next morning, 6 engineers get up with geometry programs and try to figure out a way around it. So I'd suggest that Gino, talk with some engineers and see what our weak spot is, because someone will be looking for it the day after we pass it. That's just life in the development business.
Yes, we're aware of that, Rick. I think, well, we're ready. We'll deal with that when it happens.
Well, it's a matter of planning ahead, which is basically saying to someone who's in the business, and I'm not the engineer, okay, if you had this bylaw, how would you get around it? Because once you passed it, you can't change it. The door's open.
The one thing I have to say is, looking at it, is given that the open space subdivision, you're always restricted by what you could build without the open space part of it. That to me seems almost self-regulating. So no matter what, you always have a certain maximum. They have to draw a regular subdivision and show what could normally be put in there, and that's how many houses you're allowed to have when you go open space. So the dimensions is almost less important than that initial restriction. That's at least my take on it as an actual professional civil engineer. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. The other one is the floodplain district. Is this the usual house cleaning thing we got to do every few years with the floodplains?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Eric?
If I could share my screen, I just have a couple of bullet points.
Actually, Paul, did you have a question about the last article?
No, not the last one. I was going to make a comment about the FEMA article, but I'll do it after.
Yeah, let Gino do his thing. Yeah.
Go ahead, Gino. I just unblocked it.
Okay, so the bottom line is this, as Eric alluded to, this is a requirement of FEMA to retain eligibility in the flood insurance program. And at this time, no flood map changes are proposed. However, we have been notified that they are starting the process of updating the flood map. So at some point there may be flood map changes as well. So there's some other tweaks that are not listed here, but the major changes are adding to the purpose section, this whole list. We currently have what essentially is the equivalent of number 1 here, to ensure public safety through reducing the threats of life. And they have a few more purposes, which just basically clarifies the rationale for the whole bylaw. There's also a provision that development proposals of more than 5 acres must provide technical data to determine base flood elevation, and then designed to minimize the flood damage. And kind of along those lines, if the town acquires data that does change the base flood elevation in the map special flood hazard areas, we must supply that data to FEMA and the state. Also, we need to require a permit for any construction or development in the floodplain, including fences, sheds, paving, etc. And that permitting process must include review of local, state, and federal permits that may be needed for that purpose. And finally, if the ZBA grants zoning variances from any of these requirements, or if the state grants a variance from building code requirements, the town is obligated to notify the applicant that either of those could result in or probably will result in significant increase in flood insurance rates. That's the essence of it. We already had most of what the new model bylaw that FEMA has produced. So these were just the few things that needed to be added. unless somebody wants this to stay up, I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, you can do that, please. We can see each other. And I'll just iterate that this is, and I'll take a comment from Paul that this is a pretty, I believe, routine thing that helps people to stay applicable to our state, to the federal flood insurance. Yeah, Paul?
So I'm going to propose that we not do this article this year and to postpone it for 1 year. And the basis for that is that FEMA has already said that the time to adopt this is going to be June of 2022. Why should this thing be put off? Well, here's the reason. This model bylaw is a product of the Trump administration, and its purpose is to limit federal insurance payments. There apparently was the belief that the taxpaying public of the nation was being victimized by events that happened in California and in Puerto Rico, where Congress had to appropriate billions and billions of dollars to support the FEMA program. What is in front of us is the first half of that model bylaw. And so it's actually better than what FEMA is looking for. There's other provisions that FEMA is looking for that's not here, so that we would have to do more by June of 2022 to comply with the FEMA model anyway. But in the meantime, there's been a change of administrations. And the philosophy behind this model bylaw could very well change when the new administration gets to the point of appointing a new FEMA director, and there's a closer look at some of the draconian provisions here. FEMA says it's going to be issuing new maps in December, and that, again, communities are going to have 6 months to adopt the new maps. With the expansion of the floodplain zones through these new maps, expands all kinds of regulatory obligations. Essentially, the idea here, to quote from the bylaw, we're asking the voters to adopt a phrase that I actually don't think that we should be adopting, which is victimization of the public. And whatever might have happened in California or in Puerto Rico, there's absolutely no reason to believe that anybody in Sherborn has been victimizing the public. There's no reason to believe that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has victimized the public. The whole tone of this, I think, is going to get modified and become a little more reasonable. The choices that are being offered here is all intended to limit FEMA's exposure and to set up for the denial of claims for damage to property, as opposed to actually helping people who are hard hit by serious natural disasters. So I think there's too much politics behind this particular thing. I don't think it's housekeeping at all. I respect the notion that FEMA needs to reform itself and needs to be a little more self-supporting. But I think there's a lot in here that goes too far. And I would give the new administration an opportunity before we ask the voters to adopt something from a prior administration.
The one issue I know is that this gets updated every few years, and you need to update it to even have FEMA cover you. If we don't adopt this, and let's say it gets changed the next year by the Biden administration, are we putting any residents that are in a floodplain at risk of not being covered because we didn't adopt this? And that's maybe something, a question for town council.
Well, I can tell you, if I
Gene?
could, I can tell you that we've been told by FEMA that we have until June of 2022 to do this. So no one will be harmed if we take no action this year.
Gino, you had something to add?
I was just going to say that the towns who have had their maps updated already are required to adopt it this year, but we are not among them, so we are not required to do it this year.
All right, any further discussion amongst the board?
Yeah, I'm just glad Paul was knowledgeable about it. So I think that I support what Paul said.
How about from the general public?
I think John Higley just had his hand up.
Yeah, I'm trying to, there, I clicked the raise hand button.
Okay, you can unclick it now. You're called upon.
This is in response to Paul and Gino's comments, that if we adopt it in our next year's town meeting, and the Attorney General approval doesn't happen until July or after June, does that put us at any risk, or is it just retroactive?
I don't know.
It's always effective on the date of approval. So in effect, it's retroactive, as you're saying, once Attorney General adopts it. And generally, the new regulations do go into start like July, so we should be okay in that sense.
I would just say that one of the particularly nasty things in the proposed model, which fortunately is not on this warrant, is to make the bylaw retroactive back to the date of the first FEMA regulation, which is actually quite nasty because somebody, let's say, builds a house last year, and if we adopted what FEMA is requiring, that bylaw is going to be retroactive back to years ago. And so someone knocks on the door of the homeowner who thinks he's got all the permits and built his house and put all his money in, and they're told to take it down because you don't have all the permits.
But can you do that in a zoning bylaw? I thought there was no grandfathering in a zoning bylaw. That's kind of one of the whole features of a zoning versus a general bylaw.
Right, so the FEMA model conflicts with Massachusetts law. Massachusetts law says you can go retroactive only to the date of publication of your zoning bylaw, but the FEMA model requires you to go back years. So whether the Attorney General would approve the model, but that portion of the language is not in what the planning board has put together for this year's edition of the amendments to the FEMA bylaw, but that retroactivity is required by FEMA and has to be adopted by June of 22 under the guidance from the Trump administration. And unless that changes, we're going to have a real issue about a conflict between Massachusetts law and federal law. And there are some claiming that the FEMA model actually violates the United States Constitution because it constitutes an ex post facto law. An ex post facto law is a law that you make after somebody has done something, but you make it retroactive to before somebody has done something, so that you can then prosecute them for violating a law that didn't exist at the time you conducted your conduct. That's actually what the FEMA model ends up doing. So from a legal perspective, you've got the Attorney General who has to approve this thing that's going to be inconsistent with Massachusetts law by the time you put the two halves together. You've got, as I say, the change in administrations, and you have this attitude about even if you get FEMA insurance, you're not going to get the payout that you used to get because the money's not going to be there to cover you.
I definitely think we have food for thought. It doesn't seem like I have any questions. Maybe, Gino, maybe we actually do just hook up with town council as well and see what direction we want to go with this as well. I think that's very good food for thought. Sorry. Get out of here. Okay. I think that's it on the planning board. Is there anything else, Gino or Marion, for the planning board article? I think it was just a 2, correct?
Just 2.
Was there a one quick question for the planning board? Was there a discussion about doing an overlay district on Western Ave? I know you had meetings. It was discussed at one point about doing industrial or to encourage maybe some development on that section of town. Marion, I see you if you want to.
I think Sue sold her house.
I know she did.
Yeah, I'm working on it, Marion. Now try again.
Thank you, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, we did discuss that and decided not to go ahead with it this year. We haven't ruled it out, but it requires a lot more discussion, and we're not ready to put it forward.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just know it was discussed a couple of times in regards to a certain property, but I think in general, it's probably good to look at, especially in that area of town, if we want to encourage anywhere for revenue development of some sort in the industrial or commercial side, that's probably where we'd want to do it.
All right, very good. With that, I'm gonna move on to agenda item number 7. Thank you very much, planning board. Good discussion there. That's a town caucus, town meeting, and town election discussion with town clerk Jackie Morris and also with George Fisk, the classic chair of the caucus. Yes, who's up first?
Oh, hold on. Rick Novak's got his hand up too.
Rick, yeah, did you want to add something before we talk about this, or? Yeah, go ahead. Someone can unmute.
I just unmuted him. There you go.
There we go. There we go. Peggy wants to know how do you get that mute Rick button. Seems to work beautifully. George and Janet Walsh and I have been working on this as the town caucus committee. As you know, typically in early March, there are 100 people in the town center in close quarters, yelling, talking, speaking, nominating each other. In light of COVID, that's maybe probably not ideal. And so we've been rethinking this some. George has led this charge for a long time. Some of us are trying to help him out a little bit because he's done it all pretty much on his own for forever and so well. George spoke with people in the elections office. I've spoken with town council. We have a proposal to make to the selectmen that won't take very long, and we'd like your support for it. We propose that due to COVID-19, we hold the meeting outside, socially distanced. Maybe we'll put tape on the ground where people can stand. The thinking right now, George had the excellent suggestion of the steps of Pine Hill School, which are a little bit of a natural amphitheater. He's working on getting permission from the school department to work there, but it's a big space. It's outside. There's lots of parking. It won't be being used on a Saturday. We're thinking maybe March 6th with a fallback date of maybe the 13th at maybe 10 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, whatever you on the select board think. We think we would not invite any speeches at all in terms of nominations, just the nomination itself, no nominating speeches. If a slot is contested, then maybe we could have short speeches from those people. And we propose to vote by show of hands. And town council think that's a good idea. And we propose to have extremely trimmed down check in, check out, and tellers so that it's a streamlined one-time process for COVID-19. George, tell me if I got it wrong, but I think that's our proposal.
I think that's perfect, Rick. Thank you.
So I have a suggested change to that.
Yeah, Paul.
That model has us out in early March, and my experience with early March is that weather is not ideal at that time. And that you get to early March because of the election date in May.
Exactly right.
And I think you might want to look at, the select board might want to look at having the election in June and having your caucus plan move forward by a month so that we're talking about a caucus in April. By April 15th, weather is pretty good. So if you did it like April 10th or April 7th, you're going to have much better attendance. You're going to have hopefully more people vaccinated, and you're going to have, I think, better democracy.
Paul, I would have to say you have a better chance at good weather in April. Just to add that.
Exactly. Exactly. But Paul is correct, and we agree. This is the March date is completely driven by the need to distance ourselves from town elections. So if you move the town elections, we can move up into a better weather window, a more likely better weather window.
Yep. I mean, let's say about March, in like a lion, out like a lamb. Yeah.
Can I have Jackie kind of jump in here? Because I think with the town election, we want to talk to her, but I think that also could push town meeting instead of end of April, maybe end of May. And that gives us the opportunity to do it at the garage again, like we did last year. Jackie, I kind of want to hear from you as the one who has to coordinate all these things. So.
Yes, that's why I asked to be on the agenda. Because I do think that we need to,
Oh, I think she just froze up.
That freezing? Oh, dang.
Let's give her a minute. We also, Daryl's on because this was discussed at the Board of Health with regards to the COVID committee on Wednesday night. And she has a graph that she can show if we want.
That'd be
My
great.
only, I guess my only issue of the voting, especially if it's warmer, I still like the ballot voting, especially if it's a contested election. I think people feel more secure about, ballot voting versus a show of hands. That's something to think about.
Right. It is something to think about. Because it's just town caucus, town council doesn't think we're technically required to do secret ballots. And given how many people would have to be physically handling things and counting them and moving around and breathing on each other, personally, I balance it the other way. It's but it's a fair point, Mr. Chair.
I thought it was just for time's sake, but no, I get what you mean with the handling. That is a different level there. Absolutely.
And it takes longer to count.
I think Jackie's unfrozen, so.
Okay, yeah, Jackie, sorry, you froze up there.
all right, sorry about that. So anyway, so I was on the agenda last night for the Board of Health because I wanted their feedback to be able to deliver to you guys. They definitely feel that we need to still social distance and have it outside like we did at Butler Street, etc. There's a cost factor involved in all of this, and that's another reason why I wanted to discuss it with you. I was under the impression that there was CARES Act money when I did the agenda thing, but unfortunately, I guess there isn't, and we don't know if there's any more money coming. I don't know if you guys are thinking that you want to move it and have it at Butler Street, if you want to try to have it at the high school field for the annual town meeting. The problem with the field is that we can't do a tent, and we also cannot have video. So it would strictly be audio there. And I got a quote today from our sound guy that did the annual town meeting last year. And it was just for the sound alone at the high school field is $6,300. So we're not saving a ton of money. It's quite expensive having it at Butler Street, but unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I don't think that we cannot have it at Lindquist Commons. I think you guys would all agree.
Yeah, I think it worked out very well at Butler Street last year. I think I'm at the garage. I feel like that went very well, and everybody was socially distanced, and
evidently we can still, you guys can still lower the quorum. Mary was on the call last night also, and she said that she thought that it was still in place, and I confirmed that with the Attorney General's office today. So we can still have a lower quorum We don't have to stick to the 100 if you don't want to. But I just wanted to get the discussion started. We do have to have caucus, has to be 38 days before the election. And I don't know how you guys want to do the ballot questions, if there's going to be capital expenditures, but the special, I would really prefer not to have a special town election. It's extremely expensive. I'd like to try to just do a regular election and the town meeting if we can. But it's probably, the annual town meeting at Butler Street last year was about $13,000 or $14,000.
And how's that compared to a normal town meeting? that we did?
Normal town meeting is probably, $1,000, 1,500.
Okay.
Because we're not paying for the sound and we use the school, and it's the police, are the most expensive, and if any election workers or whatever that I have to pay.
I'll tell you, my initial input, I kind of like the idea of pushing everything a month. You know what I mean? And I think it still keeps the town meeting within the fiscal year, so it keeps it kind of safe there. And then we ran a little bit less, so we went way over it, and there's some issues there and so on. I don't know if there's any other thoughts from the select board on this, but I kind of like the idea of an April caucus and a June town meeting.
And then where would you want to have the election?
You're muted, George, by the way. George, you're muted, just so you know.
I was going to say, I like the idea of the April caucus, end of May town meeting, and June election.
Okay, yeah.
That's, I think, everything's kind of pushed a month from what we usually do.
Jackie, are you looking for action for us tonight, or basically it's
No, this is basically a discussion so that we could start and that you guys could understand the cost involved. The money needs to come from somewhere. I do not have, I can cover some of it. And if I can take it out of salary because of COVID, I'm still working with just a 2-person staff, myself and Tony. I haven't been able to replace myself because we're limited with how many people we can have in the office. So I have money, but it's not necessarily in the line item to cover if it comes down to it that we don't get any more CARES Act money. The money needs to come from somewhere.
It's okay. I'd like to recognize Rick just because his hand was up for a little bit.
Yeah, just apparently in this iteration of Zoom, my raise your hand button isn't there, whereas on my business Zooms it is. So I'm sorry about that. I think just the caucus committee wants guidance tonight on when you want us to target for a date, and in April won't get any pushback from us. And second, that we have your support, I think, sense of the board as opposed to a formal vote or specific direction to pursue the outside plan. Because I think, George, that we have to start making some phone calls, lining up some people and getting going. We don't need a sound system. We don't propose, we're first up in the batting order, but the lowest maintenance of the meetings.
Rick, if just looking at a quick calendar here, you wouldn't want to do it April 3rd because that's Easter weekend. I assume that's probably not
good.
So April 10th would probably be when you'd probably want to shoot for. Just looking at a quick calendar on a Saturday.
That's a Saturday? Okay. George, what do you think? April 10th with the 17th as a fallback?
It sounds fine. I think there's a fair amount of latitude, and I think working with Jackie, we ought to just coordinate that. If the 10th is a good date, that sounds fine. But I would like to have us chat with Jackie a little bit, look at our calendars, and make sure that works all the way around.
Yeah, I can do up a new calendar, election calendar based on the 10th and based on the 17th.
And so are we now talking still about Pine Hill School, or are we talking down at the highway garage? I guess that's the question I have.
Caucus isn't going to be that very many people. Why couldn't we do it at Pine Hill School and keep it cheap?
We can. It would be good to come up with a date because I do need to get permission from them.
Right.
I've contacted the superintendent's office and they're going to be back to me tomorrow. But if we have a change of date, it could affect. They do have sports activities that begin in the spring. So,
just on the question that Rick asked, I'm 100% supporting the idea of outside. You need to do this outside. We are not going to be, based on the progress that's being made by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on this vaccination program, we're way behind. other states. And April isn't that far away. So in 3 months, there's still going to be vulnerable people who aren't vaccinated, who haven't yet got the protection. So it needs to be outdoors. I want to emphasize that. The other point
sorry, go ahead.
The other point I would make is about the election. When we're talking about a June election, Jackie, it was going to be, that's the annual election. It's not a special election. We're not looking for 2 elections. That will be the annual election. That's where any ballot questions would be included. That's where all the candidates would be included. There'd be just 1 election for you to handle, not 2. We're not.
Right.
The proposal I made wasn't to have an election in April and then have another election in June.
No, I
No
understand.
election in April. Everything on one day in June.
Right. No, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. That's all.
So what I want to throw in there, because
Not getting
we're not the COVID experts, and I appreciate Paul saying put this outside, but I would like if the what is it, the caucus group meets and talks about this further to vet the details, somehow incorporate the COVID team, because they're
totally.
They're the ones that gave how to lay out town meeting, where to put people, what to do, whatever. And I think they should actually be involved in the details of that.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that is something we specifically discussed and will absolutely do.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
Daryl wants to make a comment too.
Oh.
Eric.
Okay. Go ahead, Daryl. I don't see her.
Okay, Jeff, could you just put up the graph? Since we have a bunch of people who have connections in town, I just want to do a little reminder. So here's a kind of the history of COVID in Sherborn. You could see we did really well for a while, and then along came Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and all the rest. And beyond this, it looks like things are starting to flatten out, but we're still pretty high. So this might be going on for a while. Everyone knows, I'm sure, about the variants that are emerging that are more transmissible. It's going to take a while for vaccines. I'm sure people are aware too that you get the vaccine. The big benefit of it is that all the evidence points to the illness will be far less severe with the vaccine, but you can still contract the virus and you can still spread the virus. So the other thing that's really coming up, we have another holiday-like event happening this weekend, Super Bowl. So anyone don't go to parties. That's going to make things worse, and that's just going to make town meeting and all the rest and caucus harder to do. So that's the little message I have, a reminder.
Telling graph.
Yes, graph and the Super Bowl is a big deal in terms of spreading, unless people are setting up screens out in their yards.
Yeah.
Which is unlikely.
Thank you very much, Daryl.
Sure.
All right. I think we got some good update on that. I think caucus group has some good direction as well. If not anything else, Mike Kickham, did you have something?
Hold on, let me unmute him.
I did already. I
Okay.
think.
Mike, you need to unmute. Mike, you need to unmute yourself.
We haven't heard anything you said. Is he talking to us?
There he is.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, I think Jackie just mentioned that if you did have it at the high school, you were required to have a tent. Did you say that, Jackie, or did I hear it?
No, I said we can't have a tent. We can't have a tent. We can't have, we had it at the football field. We couldn't have a tent on the turf, and we also can't do video we can't do video there.
Really?
So we would only have a sound system if we did it at the turf field.
I don't want to beat this up any further because we're going into details. I fully understand the tent, but why can't you have video?
I talked to the sound guy. It's just not possible.
Okay, whatever. I don't want to beat that.
Done because they did it for the high school graduation, but it's crazy expensive.
Is it really? Okay, okay. I wasn't
So
sure.
Mike, we want you to combine this with Memorial Day Parade. Can you do a town meeting and a Memorial Day Parade simultaneously?
Mike, you need to unmute. We can't hear you.
Okay. I'm ready to move on. Is there anything else here? Because now we're talking about details on things, which really the caucus committee is going to really vet, and then come back to us and propose something as well, and work with the COVID team. Is there anything else before I move on to the next agenda item? We have 2 items.
Mike unmuted, so if Mike had a comment, I'd like, go ahead, Mike.
No one else said.
Okay.
Okay, well, very good. And thank you all. Thank you, Cox team. Thank you, Jackie, as well.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, George.
Next 2 agenda items is with the police chief. Where are we standing right here? Consideration appointment to Sherborn Police Department, interim chief David Bento. That's John McGuire as a full-time police officer. So Chief and Officer McGuire, thank you for your patience. I'll say first and foremost.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, rest of the board, thank you. And John is here, correct?
Yeah, I just unmuted him.
Okay, I didn't see him on my screen, but.
He doesn't have his video on.
On the second screen. He's there.
Okay, John.
There he is.
Want to make sure. All right, there he is. Good. Okay, what I'd like to do tonight is ask the board to move to appoint John McGuire as a full-time Sherborn police officer. This will be to fill a current vacancy that we have from an officer who left to go to another agency. John McGuire is a graduate of Douglas High School. He went on to complete his Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice with a minor in psychology at Worcester State University. John is currently employed as a full-time dispatcher for the City of Worcester Emergency Communications Center. John's goal is to work for a municipal police department, and after 2 rounds of interviews and an extensive background check, John stood out as a strong candidate for the position. John has completed pre-academy testing and will be attending the Plymouth Police Academy beginning March 1st following his appointment. I would like to respectfully request the select board vote to approve the appointment of John McGuire to the position of full-time officer with the Sherborn Police Department.
All right, any questions or comments from the board?
Sure.
Yeah,
I just want to compliment Chief Bento on staffing the police department. We had that study from I think it was the Novak group that said we needed to have more officers, that we were asking too much of our officers. We've seen the overtime figures are very substantial. So here's an opportunity to provide more safety for the officers, more safety for the public, and potentially reduce the overtime that we have. So my hat's off to you. Thank you for your persistence in pursuing these appointments. This is like the second time you've come forward with appointments. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just on a side note, the last 2 that you appointed recently have just completed their field training and are now working solo. So they're now on the schedule. So that has been a big help.
Very good. George, you had a comment.
I'll just move to appoint John McGuire as a full-time Sherborn police officer.
Second.
Okay, moved by George, second by Paul. I'll go on to Sam. Jeff, how do you vote?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
And George?
Aye.
I am I as well.
Welcome, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Be out there. Absolutely. Congratulations.
John, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Chief Bento.
And while we still have the chief, I'd like to go to the next agenda item, which is consideration of police department certification. And it's a comment, and this actually was requested by Selectman Durensis, Select Board Member Durensis. Governor's newly enacted police reform bill, and Chief David Bento was just going to make some comments on that and kind of just talk about it a little bit. The chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the Selectman Durensis has been very familiar with what's been going on with this. I'm not sure about the other board members, and certainly I'm not sure about the public, but it has gotten a lot of news. Unfortunately, there were a lot of nationwide issues that came up in the police world that brought a lot of this on. Some of these items were actually have been focused for a while. So what I thought I would do is just kind of go over some of the highlights of this, and then also discuss some of the actual items that are affecting us here in Sherborn. So one of the things that's happening right away, and as I go through this, some of these things are immediate and some of them are more for July or September or next December. There's different steps in the process that are going on, but the immediate change was in how police departments handle use of force. And a term that you'll hear used a lot is de-escalation. So what's being done is banning chokeholds, changing policies on shooting at moving vehicles, having laws that say officers have a duty to intervene when they see an officer using excessive force. And, I think these are certainly reasonable things to be put in place. And so, here in Massachusetts, chokeholds are not something that we're, being trained and being utilized anyway. So I think here in Massachusetts, we had a pretty good set of policies already in place. Same with the shooting at moving vehicles. There were some minor changes that'll be done, and those will be handled with our outside vendor that handles our policies, and we'll make sure that we're following the law as all these changes come in. Right now, there's a focus on the de-escalation training, and that'll be ongoing with our in-service training that our officers all go through. We all attend mandatory in-service training every year, so that'll continue. Some of the other items in use of force are planning and communication. When there are large events, they want to make sure that if we knew there was going to be a demonstration or some kind of a large gathering, the goal is for the police department to reach out to those organizers and try and come up with a plan so that things don't get out of control. And there's also a lot of changes in how crowds are going to be dispersed. So use of tear gas, rubber bullets, police canines, things like that are no longer to be used to just simply disperse a crowd that using force would not be appropriate. And again, a lot of those things don't really apply to us. We don't utilize some of those weapons, and we don't have a police canine. We may on a mutual aid type call, but it's not something that we have as part of our regular staff. So that's kind of the big one under the use of force. The next item that is on the list is a prohibition on racial profiling and providing bias-free policing, which again, I think, we'll all agree are things that we should be doing, and I think things that we are doing. So, we'll continue on that. Another item they added to this was some language on in laws that deal with fraudulent work hours and falsifying records. I think anybody that's watched the news, that's seen some of the things that have gone on, not in our agency, but certainly within Massachusetts, there's been a lot of issues on that. So again, something we want to make sure that everybody's staying in check and doing things the right way. Another item is changes to how no-knock warrants are handled. And again, we don't execute a lot of search warrants here in town, but when we do, we'll follow the laws. And if we want a no-knock search warrant, we're just going to have to go through certain types of checklists to make sure that we're following the right procedures. Another item, again, not really applying to us right now, but a lot of changes with SROs or police officers that are assigned to schools. There's a lot of changes in how law enforcement can share information. And that even goes for how an officer assigned to a school shares information with other officers within the same department. So you're really trying to, protect a lot of what's going on, with the officer in that school role, which again, I think is a good idea. There's also been considerable changes in how indecent assault and battery by law enforcement, as well as in custody rapes, have had some changes in the laws. Again, nothing that we've come across or have had to deal with. But again, we'll keep an eye on what those changes are. And obviously, if an issue like that were to come up, we would handle it appropriately. There are also new laws in place for use of facial recognition and biometric surveillance. And again, something that we're not really using, but the case could come up, and there are some circumstances where facial recognition would be allowed and totally appropriate. And then there are other cases where we may have to, justify it or follow some regulations in order to use it. There's also been changes to public records. Currently, an officer's misconduct records would not be a public record, but under the new law, they would be. Then the next area is creation of POST, which is Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. And this is something that they've actually been trying to get in Massachusetts for a while. And I think this, the police reform was able to push this through. And I think this will be beneficial in the long run. Currently, there were only about 4 states that do not have some sort of post, which this is where an officer would be certified or decertified to be a police officer. So right now there's varying training standards. This would make things more uniform. There's also going to be a commission that's going to be established. They'll handle citizen complaints. They'll look at an individual officer's personnel records. And this is something that'll be done every few years after the initial. So, if an officer has too many internal affairs complaints, substantiated complaints, they could be decertified and they could be in a position to lose their job because of their behavior. There's going to be several divisions that are going to be made up as well. And there also is a change with the MPTC, which is the current training committee. Initially, this bill, when it was filed, they were going to get rid of the MPTC, and I think it was the governor that really pushed to just modify and make changes within the MPTC and have the MPTC work with the Post Commission. So the Post Commission currently is slated to get set up, I believe, in July. So again, like I said, there's some time. There's a lot of things we have to kind of figure out as we go here. But we'll have to get the personnel records in by September. We'll have to make sure everybody's following, whatever the training standards are. At this point, I don't think there's anything that the board or the citizens should be worried about as far as the officers we have. I don't think any of the officers we have are going to be decertified based on their current personnel files. I think we've done a really good job of doing background checks and vetting out officers. And I think we've done a good job investigating complaints. And, one of the things that the commission's going to be allowed to do as well, if an officer does do something that's deemed to be wrong or inappropriate, they can actually recommend retraining, which that's been something we've handled, certain types of situations where an officer maybe makes a mistake or has a complaint filed. We'll deal with that with a retraining issue. So they're basically going to be doing what we've already been doing. So I think that should be a pretty easy transition as well. So those are really the big points of it. Again, as Mr. Durensis knows, the original document, I think, was about 175 pages. So I tried to condense it down, keep it brief for you, but also, cover these important points. And they are very important points. And I know that the union has been working on this. They've been, following along. And, their position is they're going to obviously follow the laws that are in place. And like I said, I don't anticipate any issues with our current officers. And I look forward to, implementing these changes as they come across and as we need to do them. So.
Thank you very much, Chief. And it's particularly refreshing to hear that you don't think it'll affect our officers, especially, you know, that their backgrounds are such that, you know, we've essentially been doing this police reform bill, or essentially holding to a standard all these years anyway. I had one quick question before I take questions from the board. Do you think there'll be any cost implications to the town to execute this? I know there's some talk about some of the cells had to be changed or something like that. Is there any, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the cell issue is something we're working on anyway, because we've had some problems we've had to deal with. So this year we actually made some pretty big steps. I've been working with Director Colleen, who's been handling a lot of the facilities, and we've made a lot of improvements, and I don't see that as being a big issue down the road as long as we maintain things. Last year, as you recall, there was a capital item to improve security, cameras and monitoring, so that's being taken care of. As far as cost, even it looks like most of the cost for this is going to be at the state level, because they're going to have to form these commissions. They're going to have to do a lot of record keeping, and they're not sure right now what that's going to be. I think at the local level, you know, kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, is I think our staffing, you know, a lot of this is going to come down to record keeping, keeping track of training, and, you know, supervision. So I think if we're properly staffed, I don't think it'll be a big increase, at least right out of the gate. You know, if we decide down the road to take this to a different level and go for certification or accreditation of the department, then that would have some cost to it, as far as you know, paying to, you know, get certified, paying to get accredited, having a dedicated person who handles it, which is a very time-consuming process. But you know, this what I'm talking about here is, you know, keeping the individual officers certified, not so much the agency. So the agency certification could come later, you know, if you decide you want to do that.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board members? Yeah, Paul?
At a meeting of the board, I think like 2 meetings ago, we discussed the police budget. And I wonder, in view of all the things that Chief Bento has outlined, whether he'd be willing to take another look at that budget to make sure that there is enough money in there to obtain the compliance that we should have with this new bill.
I would be happy to do that. One thing that comes up with this is, if there were going to be a money issue, I think a lot of it would be the training. And like I said, I think our in-service training and our specialized training right now, when we're short-staffed, that's something that takes a hit. And it's also something that creates overtime. I think if we have the staffing the way that it's been presented in the FY21 and FY22 budgets, I think that gives us the freedom to take people off shifts and send them to training, and have enough staff still there to fill the shifts so that we're not backfilling with overtime. That's what we've been doing for all these years. So we've had these massive overtime overages because we're trying to fill shifts so we have people on the road and have people on the desk. And then we're also trying to fill training so that we're keeping everybody at the level that they're required to be at. So again, it's kind of hard for me to know for sure. I think if those additional positions that we talked about in the Novak study, if those get approved and they get filled and everybody stays healthy and nobody leaves to go to another town, I think we can get a lot done with the staff that we have, and this won't have a big impact on us. I think if those positions don't get funded, or we have some other vacancies, then we would have to look to increase our training budget in order to stay in compliance here.
Well, I know the statute requires us to pay for the attendance of people at training.
Yes.
And when you send someone off to training, then they're not on the street, they're not helping with law enforcement because they're off being trained. And we know that there's going to be more training than has been done in the past. So all I'm saying is that we're better off making sure that we're in compliance. If there's enough money in there to do what the law requires, rather than for us to have some state agency come and take a look at us and say we're out of compliance and we need to do all this catch up. So I'm just asking for you to take a hard look at your budget to make sure that you have what you need.
Absolutely, will do. And as you know, there's a lot of state mandates that don't come with state funds. So there's a lot of those unfunded mandates that we have to work with. So I'll be happy to take a look at it. And there's more information coming in pretty much on a daily basis. You know, I attended an online training just recently on a lot of these items, and I know that the you know, EOPS is working on this, and Mass Chiefs is working on this, and the police unions are working on this. So everybody's trying to get a handle on where this is going and how it's going to affect departments, and like you said, what it's going to cost. So I'll certainly take another hard look at it, and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public? All right. I'll say, well, thank you very much for that update, Chief. And I did get your email. The union is supportive of this as well, and that's very nice to hear.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Is there, I guess, what do we have left here? We have routine business, select board reports, and continuation of goals. Any select board reports?
I just have one question. I want to make sure on our next agenda, we run through the entire warrant checklist. We usually do that at every meeting this time of year, and we're not doing it. So,
Good point. Yep. No, very, very good point. You can note that, David. Thank you.
Yep.
We did get an email, I think, from Diane Morris that said that we had a date set aside to discuss the different articles with the sponsors and the proponents of those articles. That's a little different from what George is saying, but it does make sense to understand all the articles and what the various sponsors of those articles has to say. I noticed there's some citizen articles, for example. So in order to get a full picture of everything, it does make sense to follow through with what Diane had scheduled. I just don't remember the date.
Yeah, I'd like to have.
I think it was the beginning of March.
Yeah. I'd like to have the updated checklist in front of me, certainly. Okay, anything else is general select board business or anything that's not otherwise not constitutes a report? Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just going to mention something that came up with the Board of Health that we probably need on a agenda in the near future, which is the intermunicipal agreements with Framingham and Natick with regards to the water supply and the septic for the Queen Street project. So they were just, it wasn't an item that got a lot of discussion, but the Board of Health just wanted to know where we stood on the intermunicipal agreements, and I hadn't heard anything, so I said I would bring it up as something for a future agenda.
That's a good point, Jeff. David, do you have any updates on that?
I was just going to look to make sure, but Greg Corbo from Copeland and Page is still working on those with us, and Pulte has a statement from Framingham. I think the problem is Natick right now, getting them up to speed, and there was an issue with that Greg Corbo was contacting their attorney about. I think they might have changed attorney.
Oh, okay.
But I will send it out to the board, the what I have.
That's relative.
Schedule.
That's relative to the water supply IMA you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't send it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Any, how about staff reports from either Sharon or David?
The only thing I have to mention is the police chief search will have about 7 proposals to review at the next meeting.
Can we see them in advance of the meeting?
We've been kicking that around on, right now, Vicky and I were going to compile and send it out on Monday, but it's really.
Otherwise, if we get at the meeting, we don't get anything done. You know,
Right.
I'll be like, okay, we'll wait till the next meeting to do whatever. So
Yeah, we just need to be told, do you want it as they're ready, or
I mean, if you have
wait to put them all in the
if they're all
booklet?
ready, let's say on a Monday, that'd be great. You know what I mean? On Monday or
Yeah,
Tuesday.
Monday, I think Monday would be plenty of time for us to review them. And as chair of that committee, I think, yeah, good. I would say it's probably easier if you send them as one on Monday rather than piecemeal or like I hate the late Friday afternoon emails. Like those drive me crazy because I lose them. So.
I agree.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah,
If
no,
It's
will be
better to
good.
I'd rather get it on Tuesday and have it be a one-shot thing than
Yeah,
on Monday and Tuesday.
agreed.
Well, I have a
Shot is
I have
better.
a dissenting view on that. I think if we hold everything up waiting for the last one, we're going to get it 5 minutes before the meeting.
Yeah,
It's much better to have at least 1 or 2 in hand that you can read on Monday and maybe another one on Tuesday and another one on Wednesday than to have everything held until the last straggler comes in. Then you get
There's
it all
no
at once.
He's not suggesting that, Paul. He's saying he's pulling them all together for Monday or Tuesday, not Thursday. I'm saying I don't want one on Friday, one on Monday, and one on Tuesday because I'm going to forget one of them or miss one of them. I'd rather have it as a consolidated presentation.
One email's nice. So if you have them all, send them all on Tuesday. That's what I say. If you have them all,
Great.
I think we could all just.
And that's not a minute before. That's through 2 days before our meeting.
Yeah. And it sounds
Those
like
that needed, those that stated that they needed extra time were given to Monday, so they had over the weekend. And it's only 2 or 3 of those to come in. They will be in. And I've already confirmed that they'll be there.
Okay, that's great. That's very good. All right. Is there anything else?
Well, I'm always the pain. I want to thank Diane and everyone that was involved in getting the award for Chuck and Libby. Jeannie and Sean was involved in the chair, and I think Sean's going to hand deliver the chair, I believe. So I'd just like to thank those that are still on for helping us recognize them.
Great.
Yeah.
Does Sharon have an update? Oh, she's muted.
No. Someone unmute Doug McPherson.
There you go.
Got it?
Yep. Yes, I think she needs to unmute as well. There we go.
Just cranking away on budget stuff and library stuff and keeping me busy, I'll tell you.
Yep.
Now, Sharon, I do want to ask, there was the email that came out the other day about the delay with the audit. Was that a typical thing that happened to a lot of towns, or what happened that we're 2 months behind on filing that Schedule A that? Oh, I can't hear you.
Now?
No, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we just had some issues with our audit being delayed, and we've made some major improvements in terms of our cash reconciliations. And in the future, you're not going to see this happening. And Blanson, he should have things filed. They're proposing to have it done by tomorrow. So.
Okay. One question on the auditor. I know we've talked about it in the past. How often do you review that and consider, we've had this auditor for a really long time, and sometimes I've heard best practices are you want to consider changing up auditors every now and then. Have you?
We only have a 1-year contract with them. So after this audit, we can go out and take a look. So.
Okay. I think it might be time to at least look at where we're at with our auditor. Because
I'll definitely,
a 2-month delay and a warning from the state that we're going to be held up funding is kind of scary. So
okay. I will definitely look into that.
All right. All right. If there's nothing further there, looking at just at 10 o'clock. That's not bad for us starting at 6. Can I take a motion?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay. How about a second?
second.
All right. All in favor? Jeff,
Aye.
Paul,
Well, I'm having so much fun. I think I might vote no on this.
you're gonna steal my
In
no.
honor of Chuck.
I know.
I'll vote aye.
George,
Aye.
being the last one, I'll say nay because I can take that risk. Otherwise, we'll hear. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks.
And see you on about next Thursday.
Good night.
Good night.